The prophecy says that a child with hair like the saints will become a princess. He or she will be born special. This man will bring calm and peace to the empire, intending to preserve the health and well-being of everyone. The saint was also someone who was special. She healed thousands of people, and with just her words, she stopped a bloody war that lasted for years. The king proclaimed her the savior and defender of the empire. She understood that someone would definitely inherit her abilities. The main character's name is Ursia Pesantria. She is the same girl who was an heiress and a princess to maintain balance. The first saint who helped the emperor build an empire wore pink hair. Pink was the main color in the temple. Over time, a prophecy appeared in the castle, shining brightly, calling on others to open it and read the contents. All people, even those who were not endowed with powers, understood its meaning. It was easy, but no one thought that such a thing could be possible. The emperor then did not understand what he should do. Having called a meeting, he examined the people and tried to identify the girl with pink hair. It seems that such a person did not even exist in the empire, despite the fact that the book clearly stated that he would appear. There were more and more rumors that spread around the castle, and then also a million questions about what to do. As a result, a main character appeared who exactly fit the description of what was said in the prophecy. Her hair was the main sign. The parents did not immediately understand what to make of such a mysterious appearance, but over time they simply came to terms with the way it was. Unlike his parents, the child had pink hair that stood out brightly. The hue made it clear that a saint was involved. The baby grew up healthy, but as soon as she turned 5 years old, she was already assigned to the royal throne, predicting the future. People around prayed for the girl, saying that she would become the next saint, or at least the new empress to sit on the throne. In addition to all this, the girl was the daughter of a duke. She was that child who is active and always behaves appropriately. Because of the prophecy and rumors, naturally, everyone around intended to get closer to the baby, who did not suspect her importance. Ursia grew up as a sociable and talkative child. She talked so much with the others that it seemed that her mouth was no longer able to open due to fatigue. The girl was taken to the imperial citadel in order to test her abilities, and then send her further up the career ladder. However, everything was much better than it seemed at first glance. The girl understood that it would be difficult, but she coped with everything. Sadness enveloped her body, but she realized that she could not afford to cry, even if the tears were ready to flow out. Everything became easier and better because there was one special inhabitant in the castle. He was friendly and loving while still needing friends. The little girl was glad about this outcome, but she was still worried because she lived in a citadel far from her home and family. The prince became the only ray of light that brought joy to the princess's life. She was ready to do anything for him. Perhaps it was because of her friend that the girl took her studies seriously. She understood that this was something that would be needed in the future and something that should not be neglected. At such a young age, it was quite difficult for a girl to prepare for something so responsible. She didn't sleep at night just to get everything done. Often, right in the middle of the night, blood came from the beauty's nose, which dripped in scarlet drops onto the pages of the textbook. Wiping her nose, the girl was distracted from her occupation for just a few seconds to concentrate again. She had to become a princess. Sometimes Ursia wanted to quit her current life. She felt tired of the constant flow of people and tasks. The heroine really could no longer withstand such pressure, but she could not let down her only friend, who was always there. Next to the prince, Pesantria felt the happiest, which was noticeable to everyone around, without any exceptions. Staying close to the brunette, the girl understood that she could move on and continue to fight for happiness, but everything changed dramatically. It was as if they had decided to play a joke on the girl, despite the fact that the joke turned out to be completely neither funny nor cheerful. The man who arrived from the temple turned the world upside down. The prophecy somehow magically changed. Not understanding how this happened, the girl asks why it changed, to which she is not immediately answered. Trying to hold back tears and nervousness, the heroine tries to refute what happened to her. It seemed like the man was just joking. Tiredly leaning on his hand, the monk assures that everything will be fine, but even he does not know what to say, because everything happened too unexpectedly. The blonde, frozen, looks at the interlocutor who is sitting opposite. Her eyes only express the pain that has accumulated over the past few hours. Everything she has been told is an impossible lie, which is what it is. She didn't want to believe what had just been said because life was just starting to get better. Even so, the prince will never leave his girlfriend and lover no matter what. This is exactly the belief that formed in my head. Rising from her chair and throwing open the door, Her Highness quickly runs out into the street, slamming the doors behind her to evaporate. Heading forward along the corridor, the maiden tried only to think about one thing. She hoped that the young man would never give up his girlfriend in his life. Already almost near her office, the princess stops. She hears a voice calling her closer to him. The girl instantly lights up with light, and a stupid smile appears on her face, which could not be evoked by anyone except her lover. The prince stands at the other end of the corridor, on the stairs that lead up. He looks at the girl, saying that he would like to break off the engagement before it is too late. Amber eyes sparkle with a dangerous light somewhere in the darkness. A quiet voice with a hint of disappointment asks the man what the reason is. Addressing His Majesty, the girl tries to get as close as possible, but the guy seemed to not want to make any contact. Folding his arms across his chest, the man says in a menacing voice that he is sorry. This is, of course, not true, because joy is visible in the gaze. The head drops down because there is no more strength to go forward. I can't believe that the couple can no longer be together, because she hoped for this until the last moment. The girl loved the guy, but now she could only nervously squeeze her wrist with her hand so as not to start screaming, releasing her anger. Memories pop up in my head in which the prince smiles welcomingly, extending his hand to his new girlfriend. Then the young man was incredibly gentle, trying to let the princess get used to the new realities of her life. She was new to the castle. The girl tries to make the prince remember how it was before. With effort, they can restore everything and make sure they stay together. The prince does not seem to express his emotions in any way. He stands in the same place, frowning. Not intending to make contact, he turns away. Despair is visible in the heroine's eyes. Her only loved one almost disowns her, forcing her to become someone else. The words that the Empress was so afraid to hear were spoken. The couple is no longer bound by the prophecy. What happened is not within the realm of possibility. There is still no choice. So the heroine, sighing heavily, clutches her dress with her hands. Irzia understands perfectly well that she must try to preserve at least the remnants of the prophecy. They were together for 18 years, and the young man just leaves his future wife like that. Virgo becomes some kind of garbage that is so easily thrown away. She quietly agrees to what she was told, because she is not going to hold on to the past. Not daring to utter a word anymore, she turns sharply only to leave the room as quickly as possible. It was on this note that the wonderful relationship between the lovers ended. There was only 1 month left before the wedding. It was morning outside, but despite the fact that the sun was shining brightly, the heroine could not open her eyes and get out of bed. Over time, it became easier. Opening her eyes, the girl looks around. Complete silence is now a constant guest in the room. Getting out of bed, the girl realizes that she is never there. Everything became clear with the groom yesterday, but today, even her faithful servant abandoned her. Hands reach out to the crown, which lies on the nightstand next to the bed. The stone seems not as bright as before, as if trying to remind you of what happened. A sad look examines the little thing. The girl will no longer need it because the prophecy will never change back. Sitting down on a chair near the table, the beauty examines the tiara, which is pushed to the side. All that remains is to regret the past. Behind the door you can hear the sounds and voices of security, who ask someone not to enter the room without permission. Wiping her tears, the maiden gets up to go outside. The door opens with all its might before Irzia can even proceed into the corridor, which seems too ignorant. Throwing on a robe that is more suitable for a beautiful appearance, the blonde follows forward, trying to understand what is happening there. A short figure appears in the aisle. Because of the shadows that skillfully fall on the body, it is impossible to see the face. A middle-aged girl smiles a not entirely welcoming smile, pretending that she is pleased to meet you. Her hair is also pink. It seems that every girl dreams of becoming a princess. This cannot be changed because it has been this way since time immemorial. Still smiling, the girl sparkles with her eyes. She greets the heroine again in order to bring her out of her trance. The girl introduces herself as Navia Lurtella. According to her, it is she who must fulfill the prophecy of the saint who helped the emperor. Frowning, the princess looks at the arrival. This is the daughter of the Marquis of Lurtella, but this does not make any sense. Realizing that the girl has frozen, the girl waves her hand in order to attract the attention of her interlocutor. She calls her by name. Lady Pizantria straightens her hair, saying that she is here, but does not remember that she gave permission to enter the chambers. The little girl looks around in surprise. She doesn't look like someone who has any regrets. Navia looks around interestedly and then heads to the table, completely ignoring questions about what she needs here. Raising the tiara, which seems too light, the girl, as if nothing had happened, says that she came to look around. She will live here now. Picking up the thing, Lurtella places it on her head in order to feel her strength, or how things will go next. Smiling, the little girl seemed to glow with joy. She asks if such a gift from the Emperor suits her. The heroine cannot come to terms with the fact that her place will be taken by some unbearable little thing who doesn't even know what she needs to do and how exactly. The security guard, who burst into the room, orders the girl to leave the premises. She is not allowed to come here, but she will become a princess very soon. Deciding it's time to intervene, Ursha moves closer to Miss, calling out to her to get her attention. Pretending that she doesn't understand anything, the blonde mockingly asks what's wrong. She thought that no one would do anything to her. The prophecy has indeed changed, so very soon the room will become hers. But until this moment comes, it turns out that the lady entered someone else's territory completely illegally. This act is considered a sin, so you can come up with a punishment. Trying to object, Lurtella steps back. She repeats once again that the prophecy says about her, which means that very soon she will become a princess. Tired of such unbearable behavior, the girl sighs heavily to finally teach the girl some sense of reason. The girl is only the daughter of a marquis, while Sia is still a full-fledged princess. With these words it becomes clearer. Freezing, the girl fusses her eyes. She didn't know that someone would answer her in such a tone, when she considered herself the best. The maiden is still the bride of the prince, as well as the mistress of the citadel. The emperor himself decided that for now everything remains as it is, and she is still a nobody here. Freezing, the blonde tries to find the right words. Not expecting the rebuff that she was given for the first time in her life, the heroine was scared. Perhaps the whole point is that the young lady is the daughter of an oracle. She considers herself superior to the emperor himself, which seems unforgivable. Jumping to the side, the maiden screams in fear that this is all nonsense. She can't let this happen. The crown falls onto the tile with a loud bang, hitting the hardness and almost breaking. Gold is crumbling around the edges. Pointing her finger at the girl, Pysantria asks the guards to grab Navia. They must tie her hand and foot and then give her back to the marquis. The maids who crowded near the entrance to the room begin to whisper among themselves. Virgo does not regret anything, because she believes that this will be a fairly normal punishment for the fact that Navia broke into the princess's bedroom. The guards nod in agreement, approaching the girl, who is trying with all her might to resist. She screams that this is her room. The heroine is taken out of the room, while the screams do not subside. She complains about the treatment, which is so terrible. The blonde looks menacingly into the distance. It's hard not to understand that the truth is that soon she will become a nobody, but not at the moment. It's not that bad. Walking back into the room, the girl carefully sits down on one of the sofas next to the window in order to rest. It is too stupid of His Majesty to replace Ursula with some foolish child. She can't become like the princess. Not knowing what to do next, the girl lowers her face into her hands. She should think about her plan for the next few days. We need to make the people in the castle pay for everything they have already done and are going to do in the future. A new day meant that it was time for the heroine to go about her usual business in a necessarily selected outfit. Passing by one of the columns, the Empress hears voices that say that God has turned away from her. Two middle-aged girls are discussing a girl. They had no other explanation for why the prophecy had changed. No one knows what will happen next to the Pysantria family. God turned his back on their daughter, however, since she is a princess. Most likely she will be married off to another king. The interlocutor, laughing, says that no one needs the maiden anymore. There are no boundaries to outrage because no one dares to say something like that. Stepping forward, the heroine looks menacingly at the girls. She asks them to repeat what they just said. The maidens try to move as far away as possible so as not to fall under the wave of the princess's anger. All that remains is to regret what was said. Vibrantly bowing their heads down and almost falling to their knees, the beauties ask for forgiveness, because, according to them, they are very, very sorry that this happened. The blonde assures that they will never hear something like that from her again. Humming, the girl notices the truthfulness of some words. She is no longer the crown princess, which makes it clear how hopeless the situation is. Those standing opposite continue to bow furiously in order to be quickly forgiven and released to their chambers. A voice from behind calls out to Her Highness, and then asks what happened there. The person cannot be confused with anyone. The maid of honor was the one who arrived immediately as soon as she sensed something wrong going on with the girls, who had managed to say something stupid. The blue-haired woman's indifferent gaze shifts to the former empress. Looking into the heroine's eyes, she tries to convey all the pain that has been accumulating somewhere inside her all this time. It seems that the heroine has become the same as everyone else. She had stayed with the girl since childhood, but now she had turned away. A nervous laugh escapes from my chest. Betrayal is always the worst thing that can happen, so the maiden turns to leave. The heroine had known those who said something like that for years, but now everything was mercilessly collapsing. That's exactly how it ended, even if the maiden didn't want the people she loved so much to turn their backs on her. The guard helpfully opens the door to the main hall for the former mistress. So far, this is the only one who obeys. Entering inside, the heroine first examines the room. She is not that interested in cooked food. Sitting at the table is someone who just yesterday abandoned his beloved simply with the snap of a finger, despite everything that happened between them. Ursha sighs sadly. She can't believe that the prince can now only be met in the reception hall. They are no longer family, so bowing, the maiden asks if she kept His Highness waiting. Only a little time had passed, so it wasn't the worst problem that happened. Inviting the princess to sit down, the man points to an empty seat directly opposite him. There is already a cup of tea there. The maiden was too used to seeing the prince every day that she began to take it for granted. Now, everything has changed. The heroine could never have predicted such a strange outcome of events for herself and the guy. As luck would have it, moments pop up in my head with memories that were too valuable for the girl. At first, the couple were just small children, but then over time they grew up, but also continued to spend time together. I couldn't believe that it was all over just like that. She will never again feel the warmth of a guy from the hugs he gives her. Virgo wanted to say something. She learned that, by inheritance, the son of the former owner took the place of chief chamberlain in the castle. Frowning his brows, the young man sighs. The girl doesn't seem to care at all about what happened, judging by her reaction. Not understanding what they want from her, the blonde asks if they wanted her to protest. If tears solved anything, perhaps Sia would have cried. This was not the best time to do so, so the maiden simply decided to keep what little pride she had left. The guy's hand is clenched in her hand, which is clearly visible. The heroine came here not only for news. The interlocutor was right. She definitely had something to say before leaving the reception room and walking off into the sunset. Looking somewhere into her cup of tea, Pesantria asks when she should leave the imperial palace. It was not at all difficult to build a logical chain. His Highness didn't say anything, so it will most likely be up to the prince to decide. Looking menacingly at the girl and lowering his voice, the young man asks if she really wants to leave. It seems he needs the heroine to stay here. Complete silence is what is needed in order to think. The girl slowly sips a little more tea from the mug. Realizing that she won't get an answer, the brunette leaves the room, telling her friend that she can do as her soul wishes. The contemptuous look should have gone to the guy who had already left, but was left alone with the hostess. Night had fallen outside, covering the sky with a dark blanket. The heroine stands in her room in front of a candlestick. The heroine collected a lot of useful notes, which of course she was going to give to the young man. In the end, she tried just for the sake of nothing. Memories came to mind of how 8 years ago the girl trained with a sword somewhere in the backyard of the castle. Fatigue did not allow her to continue normally, so the maiden stopped to take a breath and start again. The guy who was usually busy with other things comes closer, calling out to Ursula, who immediately looks back. He asks her not to force herself if she cannot. The emperor said that members of the imperial family must be able to stand up for themselves. Interrupting his girlfriend, the boy says that he is a good knight who copes with battles better than with the state. The hand reaches out to the girl, who is still holding the wooden sword, in order to continue the training. Accepting the weapon, the young man asks if the princess will allow him to defend her and her honor. Then the blonde turns scarlet, because she didn't even hope to ever receive such an offer. Looking down, the little girl thanks. He is good at everything, but still tries to cheer up the girl. They would go through life together, so the hero was confident that he would always be able to protect the heroine. Now everything that was once said seems like nonsense or a lie that was planned in advance as a not very good joke. By holding the pages to the candles, the maiden allows them to engulf the pages into a fire that ignites almost instantly. After a few seconds, almost nothing remained of the sheets of notes. The text disappears behind tongues of fire that eat it. The maiden is going to scatter the ashes that remain from everything that happened into the air. Approaching the open window, she releases it into the distance. Something in the distance attracts attention, which has been occupied with something else all this time. Turning, the maiden looks forward. Under the moon, a bird rushes forward, quickly approaching the windowsill, hoping to make it on time. A thin hand reaches forward to grab a piece of paper tied to the animal's leg. The baby falls on the finger that was extended forward. He moves his paws, waiting for him to eat. Accepting the note, which contains text with dark ink, the heroine unfolds a piece of paper. Joy and calmness are immediately reflected on the face. The message was from a father who was probably nervous and worried about his daughter's future. Sitting down on the chair where the girl was just a few minutes ago, she bows her head in anticipation. The door opens slowly, making it clear that the wait, as usual, did not have to be very long. Smiling, the blonde waves her hand in greeting, as is appropriate in high society. They haven't seen each other for quite some time. The man bends down. His name is Ash, the same faithful servant of the Duke's family who was sent here without his father's knowledge. The guy raises his head, looking straight into his soul with his violet eyes, in order to read what is there. We are talking about a blade, so Ursia immediately invites the young man to come into the room, rather than stand in the passage. Being almost next to the heroine's chair, the man says that he has been waiting for a very long time until he is finally called to his place. By getting down on one knee, the hero makes it clear that he is still loyal to his masters, no matter what. Stretching out his hand, the man calls out to Her Highness, as if hoping that she will agree immediately after the proposal. Taking the neat palm into his own, Ash gently kisses the back of it, trying to do it as quickly as possible. Raising his head, he looks into his eyes, asking if he can help with anything, since he has already been summoned to the imperial palace. Leaning closer to the man, the virgin says that she has one request. He will have to spread one rumor. We will talk about Lady Lurtella, against whom the Empress still holds a grudge. She didn't like the girl's behavior at all. As you know, the Marquis has neither money nor influence other than his title. Nothing will help him, even if he tries to break through. The whole series of failures happened because a man 3 generations ago allowed his wife to use weak people in order to remain beautiful. Now the princess could play perfectly on what they were going to do. Ash had to help. First, you need to spread a rumor that Lurtel's daughter is kidnapping beggar children. This will suffice for now, but eventually a second wave will be needed. By asking the servant's opinion, the maiden gets what she wanted to hear. Miss Navia was the one who first started such a war. The girl even said that the heroine is too wasteful because she manipulates the servants. It's more like baby talk. The man bows his head. He will not allow anyone to insult the girl, so he will do everything possible. Tears appear in the guy's eyes, which do not immediately become an understandable phenomenon for the heroine, who is carefully watching this. The essence of the performance reaches the princess. The servant wants to be reprimanded for something, but he pretends to be offended. You need to do exactly what you're supposed to do, otherwise others may suspect something wrong with the guy's arrival. It is very convenient when you can cry at the moment you want, so the lady lets Ash go, from whom she expected nothing less. The piece of paper with the written plan again ends up near the candles, just like the rest. Now everything will fall into place. The maiden will make you feel sorry for Navia, because she stood in the way of the only princess of Pisantria, making her feel bad. The morning, as usual, was too bright due to the sun that had gone down. A man with silver hair approaches the castle and stops to greet his enlightenment. The head is bowed while the guy talks about the latest news. The princess found herself at the center of a new scandal. Smiling, the young man notices that he cannot allow anything like this, because Pisantra should belong only to him. The servant standing opposite is trying to argue something, but he is not given the right to even utter one word. Miss Lurtella, who is the new owner of the prophecy and the castle, is also involved in this incident. Bursting with laughter, the young man incredibly scares the butler, who probably thought that he was not okay. It seems that the young man did not miss anything, which means that these were the princess's tricks, which she used to remain last. Lady Pisantria was definitely an interesting person. Some of her actions did not make sense, but they definitely showed how beautiful she was. The guy was going to meet the lady directly, just as he had planned. His list of things to do was impeccable. The image of a beautiful girl pops into my head. He can't wait for them to meet. The room is empty, as if no one had ever lived there. The girl stands in the middle of the room with a suitcase next to her. The princess had no desire to stay in the palace after what happened. The decision was to return to my father. We must leave what belongs to the palace. The only catch was the wedding ring, which also belonged to others. Hesitant to take on this task herself, the beauty grabs the bell and rings it to summon the maid. The maid appears at the first call. She bows her head, asking what Her Highness needed. Examining the woman, the virgin admits that she has never seen her. It seems that the prince replaced all the servants after the breakup. The girl calls out to the princess, to which she quickly apologizes. Lately, too many thoughts have been bothering me. Bringing a box wrapped in red velvet, Erzia asks the maid to hand it directly to the prince. The door slams after the maiden leaves the chamber, and the heroine is again left completely alone. Next, the girl will have to get rid of some clothes that she absolutely does not need, so she turns to the closet. It's worth quickly choosing which dresses you can get rid of, and which ones you can take with you. Sitting down on the bed, where her clothes are already laid out, the beauty admits to herself that she wants to throw away everything that was bought with the prince. There is another knock on the door, interrupting Erzia from the activity she has been putting off for the second day. The young lady orders entry into the chambers, and as soon as the door opens, she, of course, sees the same maid who came earlier. Handing the box back, the girl conveys the prince's words. He asked his wife to return the ring herself. Obviously, the guy just decided to make fun of him, since he asks to personally bring something that no longer belongs to Erzia. This ring was given when the couple was no more than 16 years old. At least it meant something then. All I remember in my head is how happy the girl was when she got what she had wanted for so long. Grunting, the Empress understands that she is ready to accept the rules of this game. She takes the box back. The voice of a maid brings her out of her thoughts, turning to Her Highness and asking if she is all right. Looking at the brunette, the girl understands that she is saying this completely sincerely. She is scared and worried. Virgo should not be asked such questions, but she could not help but do it. She is worried about the princess's condition. The blonde was not going to scold the maid just for asking a question, even if it hurt. There are terrible rumors about the daughter of the Marquis of Lurtella. According to the lady, it's even scary to imagine what will happen if she becomes the crown princess. Looking straight into her eyes, but allowing her to finish her sentence, the girl asks the maid's name. The brunette freezes, clearly not expecting such a question. She looks directly at the lady, who seems quite confident. Bowing her head, the maiden hurries to answer as best she can. Her name is Azel Portuba. This is the daughter of Viscount Portuba, who is also famous in narrow circles, even for the princess. The girl can still be useful and do a good job, even if now she seems incredibly scared. Turning around, the Empress comes out, where she is immediately met by several servants who bow their heads. The prince is informed that Her Highness Princess Pessantria has arrived to see him. She didn't have to wait long. The girl came as the future emperor wanted. Surely he called the beauty to mock her. Walking further, the maiden stops somewhere near the tables. She lowers her head. Looking at the table, the beauty notices a vase that still held beautiful flowers. I couldn't believe that the bouquet was left in the office. Once upon a time, Erzia herself composed it from light flowers. It was a long time ago, but perhaps the prince simply threw away the old one and brought a similar one to replace the loss. Approaching from behind the chair, the man quietly asks if his ex-lover has come to return his ring. Why the princess had come seemed quite obvious. She would not want to be in the office for another reason. This is exactly what the maiden came for. Taking the box out of her pocket and holding it to the side, she remains calm. The guy silently looks at the outstretched object, which he is offered to accept. The girl was given what the young man asked to return, the ring in person, and since this was his will, it was worth fulfilling. Without saying anything, the man just nods. He quickly grabs the box and takes it from the princess's palm. It's good that the ring remained safe and sound. His Highness has nothing more to say, so the maiden turns to leave. The girl did not follow her movements, so she completely accidentally turned over a vase of flowers. The thing quickly flies to the ground before colliding with it and breaking into 1,000,000 small pieces. The blonde looks tiredly at what she did. There is no mood at all, so even the smallest thing is incredibly annoying. Raising the hem of her dress so as not to stain anything, the heroine examines the puddle of water. The prince calls out to Sia, ordering her not to move as it could be dangerous. He grabs the lady's hand. Jumping aside, the lady reminds them that they are no longer engaged, so being so close is prohibited. Turning away, the young man quickly moves away. Virgo, of course, is right as usual because she only cares about reputation and standards. No longer looking back at her lover, the maiden says goodbye, saying that she is going to leave. The guy thought that the girl no longer had anything to do, but it seems he was wrong, because she was constantly trying to go somewhere. In fact, the lady has a lot to do. She hasn't lived here for a long time, so it will be quite difficult to collect all her things. Turning sharply, the brunette asks his interlocutor the same thing that she just said, as if not believing. In a split second, the young man is again next to the blonde, who takes a step back so as not to be influenced. She understands what she is saying, but it is true that the heroine was about to leave. It is impossible to stay in a place you hate. As she is about to leave, the maiden is stopped again. The hand grabs the wrist to temporarily stop the friend. Pulling Ursha closer, the guy tries to start a conversation, but doesn't know where to start, seeing the menacing expression on his face. Lowering his head, the brunette asks what she will do next. He wants to ask for one favor. Looking straight into the young man's eyes, the maiden asks him what he wanted to say. It shows that there is no joy here. The guy asks for help sorting out the mountain of documents that has accumulated lately. The princess has been doing this all this time. Further, instead of insisting, the hero abruptly lets go of the heroine's hand so that she can move away. Stuttering, the brunette asks him to forget what he just said. He seems to really want to run away. Turning away, he announces that nothing is needed, which means the heroine can finally be free. Virgo is not even going to say anything or object. She turns around, nodding her head in agreement. Picking up the hem of her dress, the lady leaves the prince's chambers, hoping that she can get to her room as quickly as possible. Going out into the corridor, the heroine looks around. She considered this castle her home because she lived here almost from the age of 5. Knowing full well that if she left, she would never be able to return here, the girl was still ready to take such a step. There is complete silence in the office, which allows the girl to relax a little, leaning back in her chair. A sound outside the door attracts your attention. Someone knocked only twice, which made it clear who was standing there. Allowing the maiden to enter, the heroine watches as a maid appears in the room, bowing her head. Rising from her chair, the princess follows forward. The maid helpfully asks what they wanted to get from her. Turning her attention somewhere down, the brunette freezes with splashing horror that fills her gaze. The maid is focused on the princess's ankle. Dried blood had accumulated there. There won't be a scar, so there's nothing to worry about. Sitting down on the chair again and lifting her leg up, the blonde asks to bandage her ankle. The brunette nods actively. She, of course, knows how to perform such simple manipulations, so she sits on her knees. Putting her knee under her leg, the girl takes the bandages in her hands and carefully begins to wrap the area with the wound. The blonde, bowing her head, looks boredly at what is happening, not showing any interest, only waiting for the end of the procedure. The girl is almost finished, but decides to ask if the girl needs a doctor who could help a lot, but she is refused. Instead of turning away again, the main character smiles in order to attract attention. The lady wanted to ask something. The maid's reaction was not long in coming because she just smiled. Laughing lightly so as not to arouse any suspicion, the girl asks if the maid knows how to keep her ears open. Virgo, on the contrary, looks intently, no longer showing her former interest in her interlocutor. The princess asks to tell in more detail about what rumors are circulating about Lady Lurtella, because everyone already knew. The maid says that she is not particularly interested in rumors, but a table with cookies and tea will definitely be able to get you talking. The princess sits down on one of the sofas in the room, inviting the brunette to sit opposite and start drinking tea. The maid didn't hear that much, but she knew for sure that the girl was kidnapping children from poor families. It has long been known to everyone that the Marquis loves to take blood baths. Taking a sip of her tea, the blonde nods. She doesn't need to think about who did it because Ash did a great job, just like he promised. Thoughts are interrupted because the interlocutor asks why Her Highness is so worried about Lurtella. The brunette cannot believe that such a person will become the new princess. Everyone around, as one, believes that she is unworthy of such a title. The blonde nods. She had heard something similar, so she couldn't help but agree with the rumors. The future of the imperial family cannot but worry the girl, who is well aware of what exactly will happen to them all. Changing the subject, the beauty laughs lightly, suggesting that they talk about the maid instead of talking about Naivia. Asking about Mr. Rubella, the girl wonders if Azel knows him, to which she says that he is her brother. The princess, of course, knows the guy a little, because he is the prince's assistant in the office. Smiling, the brunette seems to light up with new strength and joy. She is glad that her brother has such a fate, because they get along well. The man had to answer what it was like to be at enmity with Ursia. The prince was to blame for everything. It was evening outside, bringing with it the stars. Turning to the window, the lady notices a bird right on the windowsill. Perhaps it was another message from his father, but the bird did not look like anything familiar. Opening the window, the lady invites the bird inside, extending her hand for it to land. Receiving the message, the maiden unfolds the letter with surprise, noticing that it is just a blank sheet of paper that has no meaning. There was nothing so important or secret in the message, but it still confused the princess. The lady collected paper here, like everything else that ever fell into her hands. This has already become her new tradition. Bringing the sheet to the fire, the maiden notices the text, which begins to slowly appear, almost instantly. Freezing, the beauty intently examines what is written there, not immediately understanding why this happened. Squeezing the piece of paper, the heroine menacingly throws it aside. This trick was very cunning and, of course, had a meaning. The heroine has never held anything heavier than a cup in her life, but now for some reason she is accused of something that was not true. Neela swears on her name and the honor of the empire that her family will always care for her people. You need to believe the daughter of the oracle, and not stupid rumors. Ash, who just arrived with the letter as usual, obligingly bows before reporting the situation. It was in this way that the new princess decided to fight the rumors. She just had to dispel the lies. Sighing, the blonde turns away. The little one saw no boundaries, so she behaved as if she had already become a princess. The girl had no right to swear on the honor of the empire, so this gave a new reason for anger. Virgo asks Ash for one more favor. The man, of course, was going to do everything in the best possible way, so the lady simply went to her chambers. Accepting a piece of paper that recently arrived with the help of a messenger pigeon, the maiden carefully examines the contents. The girl did not expect anything different from her father, but she was still Pysantria, so she was not going to take back her words. A plan forms in my head. The heroine asks her father to somehow block the road because she needs to stay in the castle longer in order to collect more information about the Marquise's family. Everything is going as well as possible again and exactly according to plan. The butler who arrived reports that everything went well, but due to the collapse, the trip will have to be postponed. Pretending that nothing is clear, the blonde blinks her eyes in surprise, asking what kind of collapse we are talking about. As it turned out, the only road leading to the duchy was simply blocked, which prevented the carriage from passing. It seems unreal that this happened just like that, because the heroine asked her father to do this just a day ago. The maid standing outside listened carefully to the conversation, which has been going on for several dozen minutes. The handle is broken, so the door seems to periodically open on its own, allowing everyone to listen. In the morning, the heroine broke her pen to see how things would go. Absolutely nothing should interfere with her plan. Things were going as well as possible, so all that remained was to continue playing according to the rules that the princess set. Grunting, the girl assures that nothing terrible happened. But now she doesn't know at all what to do with Lurtella. She lives in the castle and is now not the one who stayed with the Marquis. All that remains is to beware of what might happen to other residents of the castle. The girl ran to the princess and ordered her to immediately leave the capital. Nothing stops her from doing the same to others. Squeezing his hands behind his back so as not to say anything unnecessary, the man only agrees. Someone who doesn't even know how to write cannot lead an empire. Navia couldn't even defend her state. The little girl doesn't have a penny behind her because the temple completely supports her. She spends all her money on dresses and jewelry. The man starts shouting menacingly, saying that this is completely unforgivable. This is true. Someone like the daughter of the Marquise does not know how to manage funds or help the temple when it needs something. The crown princess should behave a little differently. Things won't work that way, and perhaps everyone around will also agree with this. The rumors spread even faster than the girl thought because everything happened just a few days ago. The girl extends her palm to the one who arrived and shakes it, as a sign that everything will be fine with her and with the empire. The blonde will always take care of her subordinates, so the butler assures her that he will always be on Ursia's side. The man assures that with just one word from the princess, he will be ready to risk his life to stop Lurtella. His son will do the same. The man still remembers the very day when the blonde was brought to the castle for further training so that she would part in the prophecy. Now everything has changed. The heroine grew up and changed, but remained the same kind and pure soul who wanted to help no matter what. Due to what happened, Her Highness's visit and departure will be delayed to allow time for her to recover from what has happened. The girl looks at the sun, which is reflected on the door. I wish the rumors would continue to spread. A smile of its own appears on the face of the heroine, who knows that this time the girl will definitely not be able to respond adequately. Lurtella is just a spoiled child who steps on the same rake more than once, which seems ridiculous. Even the emperor did not dare to touch the sword, shield, and treasure of the empire. He simply couldn't allow that to happen. This was precisely the only princess of Pysantria. She was the most valuable thing for everyone around the castle and among the people. Ircia Pysantria was and remains an important piece on the chessboard, capable of doing anything. The beauty controlled groups of pieces on the board very skillfully, as if this was what she wanted to do all her life. The rival was spending the temple's hard-earned money on all sorts of trinkets, so now it was worth seeing how she would get out. Smiling and looking at the board on which one piece has fallen, the girl understands that the battle will be extremely interesting. Morning came very quickly, so the blonde went to her office to sort out some papers. The rumors seemed to be gaining popularity, spreading at a speed never seen before. In order to get rid of old rumors, you need to start new ones, so this rule has never failed. Leaning back in her chair, the girl thought that the temple should not continue to support Navia, because she certainly did not deserve it. The girl is the daughter of an oracle, so all this time she received many temple privileges. The window swings open and long hair flutters in the wind. It seems that someone did this on purpose to ruin the hairstyle. The heroine's languid gaze rises forward. She didn't think about anything except revenge, which she wasn't going to keep waiting for long. Previously, high priests did not interfere in worldly affairs, but it was said that the current one was completely different. It is known that the man is still not on the side of the new princess, which means there remains a chance to lure him over and direct him to the right path. Miss Lurtella is not supported by the fallen family of the Marquis, but the temple is a great influence, since among the people its strength is equal to that of the emperor. It is very difficult to resist such abilities and resources, and if this continues, the situation will bend into a dead corner. If Navia continues to dishonor the honor of the temple, then everything will change. The oracle would hardly want something like that. Apparently, after all the rumors, this is exactly where the path leads, so all that remains is to change the priest's opinion. If it happens that everything goes according to plan, then everything will end quite well, and definitely in favor of the girl behind the throne. Ursia still didn't even know what a high priest was. This will be the next task to find out. A man with snow-white hair turns around swinging his blade. The training is proceeding as usual. The young man is interrupted by a voice calling him. He, in turn, lowers the blade, relaxing a little. The sparring opponent falls to the ground to rest, while the mentor follows forward to the newcomer. The letter was delivered from the palace itself, and it said that the Princess of Pysantria wanted to meet with his enlightenment. A sly smile almost immediately appears on the face of the young man, who has drawn up his own plan. He knew this would happen. The time for the meeting has not yet come, but it seems that Sia is carefully monitoring the information she needs, giving herself an account. Moving through the garden, the young lady leads the maid behind her, because today, as usual, she has a lot of things to do. Turning around just a few centimeters, the maiden calls Azel, who looks interestedly into the eyes of her mistress. Taking the dark cape off her shoulders, the maiden hands it to her friend, because the air is quite cool in the morning. Trying to object, the maiden was interrupted by the princess, who asked in a sweet voice what was wrong, to which she received a negative answer. Azel was known to have a role in the plan. She was the elder sister of Rubella Portuba, the prince's assistant. A brunette may provide help that is usually not expected, since she is kind. It's worth keeping your allies. The girls are in the beautiful garden of the castle, which, as usual, blooms and smells. Roses have always been the most beautiful. Calling for a friend, the girl hears the address Your Highness, to which she shakes her head negatively. This is no longer a real status. Turning away, the girl asks not to take into account such little things that are not so important. She wanted to say that the beauty simply called her princess. The girl's cheeks turn bright red as she nods. She feels as if she is getting closer to Ursia herself. In one of the halls in the garden is one of the most remarkable buildings in the entire kingdom. The glass house impresses the heroine. Smiling, the blonde nods. Only representatives of certain families can enter there, so it is a great honor. The girl's brother is His Highness's assistant, so their family cannot be called ordinary. It's worth coming here more often. Smiling, the brunette nods in order to quickly agree to what she is told and not delay it. The woman looks directly at her interlocutor, who hesitates as if about to say something that has been bothering her for a long time. It turns out that Azel has not been able to find a home for a long time, so she simply lives with her brother. Maids usually go home or live at the palace, but with her, everything is different. Bowing her head, the heroine asks with interest whether the maiden really loves Rubella so much, who treats her well. This is the truth, because the brunette cannot imagine her life without her brother, who constantly helps her in everything. The smile itself is renewed on the face. The girl took the bait, which means now couldn't be a better time. Extending her hand, the heroine sighs in admiration. It turns out that the maiden has lived away from her family since childhood, so this is worthy of praise. The girl's hand gets tangled in the brunette's hair, who tries to justify herself and say that everything is fine. Looking straight into the eyes, the princess asks about what topics Azel usually talks about with her brother. Smiling, the girl says that she doesn't have time to talk with her brother. That's why she's so interested in listening to other people's conversations. Beauty knows that they usually tell each other how their day went or when one of them learned about something new. Sometimes they also talk about work, but this is the question that interests the heroine most of all. The fish was hooked, so he shamelessly talks about some dangerous mission that his brother was sent on. It's probably difficult to be the prince's assistant because of the constant problems, so this cannot be ruled out. Virgo knows that what her brother does is constantly idle, and this is not the first time. The other day, the princess saw a man playing chess with another assistant. This doesn't seem true in Azel's eyes. She can't believe what she just said, because he always said that his job was too difficult. The guy lied all the time. Once he told how hard it was for him, so much so that he could barely hold on due to the volume of tasks. The man constantly said that part of the temple's responsibilities fell on him, and that now he doesn't even have a single day off. Obviously, the guy wants to pretend that he is cooperating with the temple, but even in action, they and the Empire had a difficult relationship that could not be repaired. The question remains about Princess Lurtella, who appeared for the throne as if out of nowhere. Everything needs to be sorted out because for now the situation is stalemate. The girl reaches out to Azel, asking her to calm down because she was joking. The virgin freezes in surprise, blinking her eyes as if she had heard an unfunny joke, which it was. She and her brother are very close because it's just the two of them in the palace. The princess knows how hard the young man works. The friend nods in agreement because she has always been confident in the veracity of her brother's words. The blonde is a little worried about something. Her brother will soon return from the war, and she doesn't know what to tell him. Jumping up from her seat, the brunette furiously asks how she can help. Bright lights of joy shine in the eyes. If Azel is getting involved and intends to help, then there is absolutely nothing to worry about. This rule has long been learned. The girl left the hall to go perform her duties and left the princess completely alone with her thoughts. Virgo is ashamed that she wants to get closer to her brother only for her own purposes, which are not as pure as they seem. Azel even swore that she would not tell anyone, which means she intended to keep her word, but this matter had reached a dead end. The beauty raises her mug to take a sip again and finally calm her nerves, which have been playing out in earnest. His Highness was someone whom the crown princess definitely did not expect to see in the morning, after everything that had gathered in her head. Miss Lurtella, like a curse, appeared next to the prince, holding his elbow and smiling a nasty smile. The heroine silently watches the couple, hoping that no matter why they come here, the performance will not last long. Curtsying, the blonde asks what the former empress forgot here. The girl listens to what they begin to tell her. This is not the first time Virgo has said that you need to be as polite as possible with her, but it looks like she will have to explain it again. The gaze is turned to His Highness, who silently stands aside. The beauty asks his permission. In fact, this is all false because the heroine is her own boss, but agreement from the outside helps a little. It seems that Navia does not know the rules of etiquette that even a 3-year-old knows. Virgo is not allowed to speak to her without this permission. The heroine still cannot consider her interlocutor to be a simple daughter of the Marquis. She is no longer a princess, but she is treated well. It seems to the little girl that they are on the same level, but she is so stupid that she still does not see the difference. The woman's father is the Duke of Pisantria, so simply by being his daughter, the lady is worthy of such treatment. Looking menacingly at Miss Lurtella, the lady orders her to be silent. Otherwise, one more word, and she will be tied up and taken away again. Everyone around should be more polite to the future queen. This time, such jokes will no longer fly, no matter how much one would like it to. Virgo looks wearily at her interlocutor, who, like a vampire, is sucking out all her strength in order to continue to fight. The prince is completely impossible to understand. He just stands silently on the sidelines and watches as his beloved is thrown into the mud. The man either tests the girl's fragile patience or simply decides to remain neutral, which is strange in his position. Miss Lurtella leaves the princess alone and turns to His Highness, smiling. Running closer, the heroine grabs the guy's forearm and elbow. She finds herself next to him again, just like when she came here. Smiling, the little girl suggests leaving this place as soon as possible so as not to spoil her mood for the whole day. The brunette watches the girl's actions with concentration. You can see from his eyes that he is most likely not happy, but his actions cannot be predicted. It's strange that the girl is somehow too calm after the rumors that recently began to spread throughout the empire. Taking into account the girl's temperament, one could understand that only once she felt superior to the princess, she would try to destroy her. It seems that the beauty is not on good terms with the priest, which means that this was the truth that was found out. The voice sends Lurtella to the castle herself. The heroine tries to understand what it is, while the prince pulls his hand away from the baby, who is in a state of shock. Without giving any more right to say at least something, the young man again orders Navia to go further alone and just wait in the castle. Bowing a curtsy, the girl promises that they will meet very soon, even if she looks a little discouraged. The man walks forward to stand directly in front of the lady, standing next to the table, allowing Lurtella to go ahead. Before leaving, the girl turns around to look at the heroine. She just looks arrogantly at the leaving lady. The girl's hand noticeably squeezes the hem of her dress, most likely out of anger, which is no longer almost impossible to contain along with the rushing feelings. The woman sits down on a chair and raises her mug of tea again to take a sip before starting a conversation. The cup falls back onto the dish, making an approximate clang that hurts the ears a little. Looking straight into the prince's eyes, the lady asks what he wanted to talk about so much, since he came and stayed with her. The man rises from his seat and bends down right next to the girl's face, who turns away. They say that the lady has been doing strange things lately. When asking again, the girl acts as if she is hearing about something for the first time, even if it is not true. We are most likely talking about rumors that have recently spread too quickly, almost at the speed of light. The man asks Ursha to stop. She herself understands perfectly well what is wrong, but this cannot continue. Rising and extending his hand to the face of his former lover, the prince reminds that this is not a request, but an order and a warning. The girl must be smart and understand that her friend simply wishes her well, and not the failures that will later happen to her. Rejecting His Highness's hand, the girl nods in agreement. She has no choice but to agree to the conditions. The guy can warn as much as he wants, and it will no longer depend on anyone else. Once upon a time, a maiden loved a young man very much who was ready to come to the rescue and protect. In moments when the lady was scared because of rumors and condemnations, she always understood that there was someone to help her. The friend always called the blonde by name, trying to support her, even if he was not capable of much. The baby loved the brunette because he called her by name, also inventing abbreviations. The girl loved the guy because he always extended his hand to make everything easier. The boy always held hands with the princess, realizing that this way she would be taken more seriously than before. Now everything is in the past, so the beauty reminds that the Pesantria family will not allow anyone to become their enemy and live in peace. Virgo simply follows the rules of her family, because this is how she was taught by her father and mother, who cared for her. The guy tries to stop Ursula, who is already getting up to leave the garden and not be alone with him. Turning away, the lady asks him not to call her by name anymore. They are no longer together, which means there is no need for this. Now for the young man, the maiden will forever remain Princess Pesantria, who very soon will become just a nobody. After what was said, my soul did not feel a bit lighter. The girl follows the path into the distance to hide. The beauty quickly moves further and further, but the noise of heels behind makes it clear that someone is following her. Most likely the young man is not completely brainless, because he is waiting for the lady to go into a deserted place in order to deal with her. In the stable, there is only a groom who takes care of the horses. He is the same man who most likely stalked the maiden. There's definitely no shortage of courage, especially since the lady knew that she wouldn't give up anything. She takes the potion jar out of her pocket. Turning around, the heroine asks in a menacing voice whether her companion is afraid to be completely alone with her. The one who followed the princess turned out to be none other than Miss Lurtella. She didn't say everything she was thinking. The heroine looks into the lady's eyes, asking what she needs, to which she, laughing, asks to listen to her. Virgo comes from afar but hits the mark exactly because everything that is said is true. Various rumors began to circulate. It didn't take long for the future princess to realize that their rival was disbanding them. Folding her hands on her chest, the lady easily replies that it was not she who first started the war between them. We were talking about rumors that were also spread about Ursia. Virgo would never say anything about her. The blonde frowns. She can't believe that she missed the choice of the one who began to throw mud at her. When asking who did this, the heroine receives only an easy answer in the form that the interlocutor does not know. Instead of saying anything, the girl opens a jar of blue potion. Smiling, Pysantria invites the girl to show her something interesting, something she has not seen before and might be interested in. The liquid turns purple and slowly pours onto the ground. If it had been anyone else, the lady would have poured it on him. A scorched circle formed on the ground, which showed that the contents were more like acid. Miss Lurtella, clearly in a bad mood, steps back. She frowns, realizing she's lucky. If Navia wants to discuss something, the best solution is to simply write a letter, which can save a lot of time and nerves. The girl quietly advises not to piss her off so as not to get even more problems, but something attracts attention more than words. On her finger is the same ring that was given to the princess long ago, and the same one that the girl returned to the prince. The little thing is on the left ring finger. It doesn't take a sage to understand what all this is about. The girl has a bad character, so of course she will not miss the opportunity to make fun of her. She smiles. The prince gave her the same ring that she herself returned to him. The princess is probably very sorry, but she doesn't regret anything. Humming, the beauty notes her surprise that someone liked the worn things in principle. If she were Navia, the girl would not be so happy. There are also many pitfalls to what happened. Looking at the ring again, the heroine tries to justify herself. She is only wearing it temporarily while they make a new one for her. Obviously, the future princess has nothing more to say. This means that it is free, so as not to get in the way. The interlocutor's hand clenches into a fist to try to calm down her anger, which is shrinking inside. Sighing heavily, the girl nods her head without saying another word in order to maintain a decent pose. The girl doesn't know what to say anymore, so she turns around and slowly heads out of the garden. The heroine carefully monitors her rival's movements so that she doesn't try to do anything strange. Moving aside, the maiden calls out to Ash, who has been nearby all this time. They manage to talk only after sunset. Coming closer, the guy asks, "Are you okay, madam?" He decided to stay to supervise everything. Virgo grins. She was afraid that she would not be able to cope with her anger and would end things with the princess. But everything turned out okay. The man nods. He wanted to deliver a letter that was waiting in the wings, so he tried to meet with Ursia. Rummaging in his pocket, the guy tries to find something and then holds out the envelope that was needed. It was written on paper that the war was over. This only meant that the soldiers would return in a week. 3 years ago, the Kingdom of Sepia asked the Empire to send an army to their aid, which was formed. In exchange, an agreement was signed that they would become loyal vassals of the Empire. It was then that Rias Pysantria, Ursia's brother, went to war to defend the state. Rumors spread quite quickly, so the lady knew that the Empire managed to win almost without losses. What happened meant only one thing. The boy who left with his brother would also return very soon. A smile appears on the heroine's lips. She understands that the future will only be better than now. What happens will be something that can influence the course of the battle and play into the hands of the main character. It was only a week, but it was almost excruciatingly unbearable. The girl, as usual, lay in bed and looked at the ceiling. The soldiers, as promised, were supposed to arrive the very next day, thereby fulfilling their duty. The sun has not risen, so the beauty decides to sleep a little more, but in the morning she is surprised by what she sees. Sitting up on the bed, the girl looks around. The whole bed is covered with beautiful peony flowers. The beauty picks up one of the buds to inspect, realizing that it is not poisonous, but left only for pleasure. The Pysantria family pays a lot of attention to medicine, including poisons, so poisoning the princess will not be easy. The door opens, allowing a figure to step inside. A male voice asks if the heroine is awake. None other than Alfredo Venezia, the second prince, appeared in the room. He smiles and asks, "Did the maiden like the flowers?" Straightening her hair, the beauty asks in surprise why he did this. She had no idea about this scenario. Without allowing the princess to say another word, the brunette leans over the bed, holding out another bouquet of roses. The blonde intently watches all the actions in her direction. This doesn't seem absurd. Turning away, Irsha asks why Alfredo has come. They were supposed to return from the war only tomorrow. Smiling, the prince continues to remain silent. He simply admires the morning beauty of the heroine. Sitting down on the bed next to him, the brunette finally explains his visit. He just wanted to visit his friend. The young man ran here as fast as he could because he had recently learned that the prophecy had completely changed. Assuring the guy that everything is fine, the girl nods. There is nothing to worry about, but there are still a few pressing issues remaining. The boy has grown a lot. 3 years have passed, which means he is already 16 years old. Alfredo is the illegitimate son of the emperor and the brother of the prince. Moving away a few inches, the guy notices the fact that the friend is right. He is no longer the same little child. Stretching his arms forward, the brunette clings to the girl's body and hugs her as best he can. Feeling the confusion on his friend's face, the guy raises his head up, asking if she remembers something that happened before the war. The heroine lowers her gaze, realizing that she knows perfectly well what exactly we are talking about. From the very beginning, and from the very moment the maiden appeared in the castle, everything changed for Alfredo. The boy was always alone and constantly bored because no one wanted to spend time with him, so he asked the heroine if she was too busy to be with him. Smiling, the girl assured that everything was fine, asking the young man about what exactly he would like to do. From that time on, this couple became inseparable because the guy followed his girlfriend like a tail. The princess gently strokes the guy's head. She is proud that he was able to return safe and sound from where the queen sent him. Still not lagging behind his friend, the young man presses even closer. He felt very lonely alone without the only person who understood him. Releasing the lady, the guy moves away to do the same manipulation with the flower. When Alfredo was 13 years old, Ercia allowed people to enter her room without permission, so he thought the agreement was still valid. Holding the flower closer, Venice carefully tucks her hair behind her ear and inserts the peony into the beauty's hair. Looking at the girl, who turns away half a turn, the man quietly asks if she minds. Nodding, the girl changes the subject. It is important for her to know that no one has seen the young man, to which he responds positively. They didn't need any extra problems. This is good because even if the heroine broke up with the hereditary prince, she definitely doesn't need such rumors. Calling out to his sister, the brunette tries to attract attention because there are still several unanswered questions in his head. The guy frowns and then asks if it's true that he and his brother really broke up. Turning around for just a few seconds to look at her interlocutor, the lady nods easily. The young man understands that it was all true. He couldn't believe it until the very last moment, but it was true. Approaching a girl, the young man calls her by name before starting to speak. He asks if she wants to have breakfast with him. The next step is for the young man to lean over and kiss the back of his sister's hand. Answering with a refusal, Irsha reminds that the guy still hasn't even greeted him and Her Majesty. They can hang out later, but for now it's worth going to see Dad and Stepmom, even if it's a little upsetting. Looking sadly at the floor, the guy turns around and heads towards the exit. Still, he hasn't changed a bit over the past years. Once outside the door, the guy smiles. He understands that now he will have a chance to prove himself, so he will definitely try. Combing her hair, the heroine approaches the window, behind which a noise is heard. Squealing and clanging make it difficult to concentrate or relax. People outside the window are rearranging boxes, which keep coming and coming, adding new ones to their rows. The servants do not have time to cope with everything. Most likely, they are going to hold a banquet in the castle in honor of the return of the knights who were able to remain safe and sound. If a former princess who broke off her engagement appears at such an event, the reaction of the prince and his new companion will be extremely cheerful. There is silence in the office, as usual, which is broken by Azel. She arrived to announce the letter. Accepting the piece of paper, the princess thanks the maid, who immediately smiles. She always liked praise from her mistress. The heroine slowly unfolds the message, which had strange content, but this was not the most important thing at the moment. As expected, the brother returns to the mansion. He is the heir, and for him, over the years, too much work has accumulated. The young man will still come to the banquet, but this will be an isolated incident and the visits will end. It was necessary to prepare for the banquet, even if, as is known, this was done by servants and knights. Nodding, the maiden asks if Azel will get there. She will go along with her brother, who, of course, will take her with him. Pretending to be unhappy, the heroine asks the girl to help her because she needs it like no one else. When asking what happened, the girl does not give time to answer, immediately saying that she is always ready to help. The heroine turns away, making a gloomy face. Azel immediately finds herself kneeling next to him, trying to find out what happened. Just about to talk about Miss Lurtella, the heroine apparently changes the direction of her thoughts, so she asks the maid to forget about it. Clenching her fists, the brunette assures the mistress that she can tell her anything, and she will definitely help her. Dropping down next to her, the heroine asks you to just listen to her. Cats are scratching at my soul, so an hour of stories definitely won't hurt. Bowing, the princess asks not to tell anything to anyone, simply so that the conversation remains secret. What the blonde is about to say could seriously damage Miss Lurtella's reputation, which doesn't seem right because Navia was stalking Irzia. Sitting in the office, the girl thinks about how to deal with her rival. Nothing helps, and even more debt will not change anything. There is no point, so the woman simply calls Ash, who should have already found out what he needs. The man collected all the information found on the marquee in a folder, but the girl is interested in where he gets the money from. Ash nods his head. There is what you need there, because it turns out that someone lent the marquee money to survive. The trade guild became the center of donation, and all because the son of the head is in love with Nivea. In reality, things are completely different. The brunette understands that the marquis just found the young man's weakness. Weaknesses are something Ash knows about, but he knows that Lurtella killed one of his relatives to serve money, which is completely immoral. The guy's father still doesn't know the whole truth, so the young man simply put pressure on the head to agree, and the marquis didn't tell him anything. In this case, the best solution was to pay Lurtella before getting into a lot of trouble. Besides what was just mentioned, Ash had prepared something much more important, and that was worth taking into account as well. The temple also lends money to the marquis, which is an even stranger branch of income than the guild. This seems obvious, because now Lurtella is the child of the prophecy, but the brunette outlives her mistress. The matter is completely different. It was the same way even before the prophecy changed. The temple almost always gave money all this time. It was the priest who gives the money who announced a new prophecy, which brings a lot of false information and suspicion. The girl jumps up from her seat. She can't wait any longer because the answers are the most important thing in order to unravel the tangle of events. Many say that the guy has a secret affair with Miss Lurtella, who appeared in the prophecy in this way. Such an announcement seems extremely strange because, as far as we know, relationships are prohibited for priests. For those who serve in the temple, relationships are a strict taboo. For some reason, the high priest decided that he could afford to behave in this way. The girl looks thoughtfully into the reflection on the glass. She doesn't know what to do in such a situation. Turning to Ash, the heroine asks him to do something very important for her, because this remains the only way out. Bowing his head in an obliging gesture, the brunette promises that he will do whatever Her Highness wishes, because you need to remain loyal. Virgo wants to know more details about Navia. Her weaknesses are the most important, but only one was found. Beauty. Obviously, the maiden was really obsessed with frilly dresses, jewelry collections, and beautiful servants. Looking into the young man's eyes, the woman quietly asks him to seduce his rival in order to continue acting according to the proven plan. If this is what the princess wants, then the young man will fulfill any order or request. He nods his head in agreement to the adventure. The heroine can only arrange one single meeting for the couple, and then they will get what they want to get. If Ash asks for this, then he will be given a meeting, under the circumstances of which he will be able to do what he promises. The man was a dagger that the father gave to the girl for her birthday for complete protection and peace of mind. The boy grew up in the guild because he was being trained to become a killer in the future. He trained precisely for this, without sleep or rest. It turned out that, in the end, Ash was left completely alone. No one was willing to help him or do him any favors when he needed it. It was when no one wanted to deal with the guy that his father found him and took him with him to leave him on the estate. The young man began to live with the Duke, and therefore, after everything he did for him, the guy is ready to do anything for the sake of the Pesantria family. Memories of when the girl was still very small, being a special person no older than 12 years old, come into my head. His Highness gave the girl a full day off that day, so she did not intend to waste a minute. She wanted to read more. Passing by one of the doors where the light was on, the little girl freezes. She thought that everyone had been asleep for a long time. Approaching closer to the doors, the maiden carefully opens them, quietly asking, "Who's there?" so as not to scare him away. In the room was none other than Ash, who was completely covered in red liquid. He looked surprised. A hand from the floor reaches forward to grab the princess's ankle, causing a slight yelp from her. Squinting, the girl jumps back, but they hold her in such a way that she can't do it on the first or even the second try. The man on the floor pulls the future princess towards him, making some strange, frightening sounds due to the pain that enveloped him. Ash steps on the guy's hand with his foot so that he no longer asks for help, and he asks Milady to go back to his chambers. Insisting on staying, the blonde asks that everything be explained to her first, and then she can leave with peace of mind. Continuing to swear, the girl tries to insist on her own, completely not noticing the blonde man who appeared from the back. Hearing someone's steps, the maiden turns sharply to prevent what could happen by accident. The brother, who is also completely covered in stains, quietly asks in surprise why Sia ended up in this room. The girl worriedly asks her brother what happened here, to which he simply gives his gloves to Ash and picks up his sister in his arms. Trying to escape and continuing to kick, the girl tries to jump, but no one gave her the opportunity. The boy brought his sister into the room and sat him down on the bed. He quietly asks her what she was doing there, being all alone. Virgo still wants to know what happened there, to which the blonde just lightly shakes his head. Children as old as Sia are long past bedtime at this hour, so they shouldn't be wandering around the castle. All this is completely unimportant. The young man puts the heroine to bed so that she can sleep instead of reading. The baby still can't sleep, so he promises that he will answer all the questions put to him no matter what they are. Kissing his sister on the forehead, the young man asks her to sleep. You just have to wait until morning, and then he can explain himself, because now is not the time. Closing her eyes, the girl watches through the crack as her brother turns around and heads out of the room to finish what he started. The servants who met the guy did not react at all to his behavior or to his soiled clothes. What happened gave the girl the idea that everyone, all this time, was well aware of what was happening in the castle. Later, the heroine learned the whole truth. On that very day, Brother and Ash dealt with the assassins sent to the girl from the prophecy. It was because of the girl that many servants who tried to slow down the mercenaries as best they could suffered and died. The Pesantria family had its fair share of suffering, and the maiden, as a child, had to go through it in order to grow up. It's funny that after everything that happened before, history was now repeating itself, because new mercenaries appeared as if out of nowhere. Not expecting to hear an answer, the princess grins. She asks if Miss Lurtella sent the men, which seems obvious. The heroine had long noticed that she was being watched, and therefore meandered around the garden. It's time to do what she promised and deal with each of them. The mercenaries who were going to deal with the defenseless princess turned out to be the ones who would be killed in her place. A whistle is heard throughout the estate, after which Ash appears, who will attack the people in black robes with a flourish. Jumping to the side, the guy takes a position that is most convenient for delivering another blow to the enemy. Ash shields the mistress with himself so that no one else will try to harm her or spoil anything. She orders to deal with the guys. The man asks for forgiveness for not dealing with the attackers much earlier, because now it seems almost too late. Of course, the brunette carries out all orders without further ado. He asks the princess to turn away and close her eyes so as not to see anything unnecessary. The lady stands with her arms folded across her chest, continuing to observe what is happening around. She enjoys the picture. Ash, as usual, does the best job, because the opponents fly to the sides one after another, as if weightless. The heroine does not hope that everything will end not in their favor, so she helps the man by talking about the fighter on the right. Bouncing back, the guy swings, thereby getting rid of the last enemy, who probably already greatly regretted having contacted him. Dropping to one knee, the young man asks for forgiveness. He didn't want Milady to see everything that happened on the battlefield. Smiling, the lady assures that everything is fine. She can't behave inappropriately, so she holds out a napkin to wipe her face. Freezing, the brunette looks in surprise, because this is Her Highness's scarf. He could have simply washed his face so as not to get the thing dirty. The man suffered greatly from the attackers, who were originally intended for the princess. In the event of such an outcome of events, the guy simply does not dare refuse, because he understands how this could end for him. The guy turns towards the victims. He left one of them alive so he could deliver it to the Duke's estate. If the mercenary tells something, then it will be possible to officially accuse Lurtella of attacking Ursha. Everything should be kept secret, and precisely because they were sent by none other than Lurtella. No one else dared to carry out such an attack right on the palace grounds. First, You should find out how Nivea is connected to the temple. Otherwise, it is dangerous to get involved with her. The survivor should be taken to his father. The guy can be locked in a cage because someday he may still be needed in court or in life. It was night outside. The castle fell asleep, and only the heroine remained, standing near the window, receiving the bird. Every day the chick flies from the estate to the capital and back, which makes him very tired. From the letter, the girl realized that it was quite difficult to find who was behind the guild of assassins who attacked. Attention is distracted by a knock on the door, which seems to deliberately sound too annoying, even for such a person. The Virgin invites the newcomer to enter, so none other than Alfredo appears and greets his sister. The young man arrived to convey something important. He fumbles before finally delivering something that will make the heroine surprised. The hero finds himself in the hands of a snow-white dress, which by law should have belonged to Ursia. Getting up from her seat and clearly nervous, the heroine asks how exactly the man managed to carry this thing with him. Putting his hands with the robe forward, the guy seems to be applying it to the woman's figure. It belongs to her and no one else. The Virgin was supposed to wear a dress to her wedding, which ended up being cancelled. Alfredo looks surprised, as if he didn't know this. Looking into Venice's eyes, the blonde asks why they brought it. It turns out that some marquise wanted to steal the thing. This person was none other than Miss Lurtella. The boy nods in agreement, because it turned out to be true. The guy's eyes light up with an evil fire. The Virgin should not have touched other people's things without asking, even under such circumstances. The Virgin sadly examines the robe that was in her hands. Nivea, the new child of prophecy, is therefore no longer a strange marquise. Changing the topic of conversation, the beauty asks again where the boy got the dress from. She notices his surprise. In fact, everything was pure coincidence. The young man went to get a gift but saw a girl with pink hair, so he followed her to the bar. The brunette waves his hand, saying that he did not take her for an acquaintance. He would never have been able to confuse her with someone else. The interlocutor nods her head, agreeing with what she heard. She throws the dress on the table so that she can no longer keep it hanging. The heroine sits down on the sofa, asking about what happened at the bar. This is the most interesting thing now. The young man sits down opposite. He begins to say something, but at first, as it turned out, only Ursia's name was heard. The heroine repeated the name, looking at the dress she stole from the closet. She wasn't too verbose. The boy felt sick that the name was mentioned in such a place, so much so that he just wanted to beat everyone up. The brunette decided not to waste his energy, so he simply grabbed the dress and ran away. He asks for praise. The heroine looks at the thing again. The snow-white fabric made it clear that it could only be worn to a wedding. Turning again to the guy opposite, the girl is about to tell something, but in the end, she simply stammers, unable to gather her thoughts. Memories of the prince telling Ursia that the most exceptional color is white because it stands out the most comes to mind. White has the ability to add sophistication to anything or person, which is why it is considered so beautiful and special. The prince had seen many outfits, but this was one of the best. He is sure that the robe would look great on a maiden, even without useless accessories. The hero carefully places his hand on the top of his girlfriend's head, stroking her hair so as not to ruin her hairstyle. According to him, the accessories were not in the style of Pesantria, which could outshine any of them without any effort. It seems as if the entire air has suddenly become poisonous, causing the girl to breathe harder. Love is gone. Turning to Venice, Ursia again says that she does not need the dress he brought with him. For the heroine, such an attire was just an empty reward that she still wanted to accept. What happened to the girl, and what she received, is more for the future years spent in the Empire. Now everything has really changed, for the worse. The heroine is no longer the princess of Pesantria, and she does not need the dress. Smiling lightly to lull her friend's vigilance, the blonde asks to quickly return the thing to Miss Lurtella. The guy gets up, walking his boots right along the hem. He carefully takes the beauty by the face, asking what happened to her. The girl silently looks into the eyes of her interlocutor. She cannot explain why she acted this way. The brunette examines the heroine's facial features. I can't believe that she almost always had such a sad expression on her face. Pesantria puts her hand to her cheek. She never even thought about how exactly she looked from the outside to others. The girl reaches out her hand and runs it through the hair of the young man opposite. She asks if what he just said is true. Pressing himself against the palm that was offered, the boy lightly rubs it, nodding in agreement. The guy turns to kiss the palm on the other side, continuing to look into the beauty's eyes. Sia interrupts the guy, asking him not to do this again for his own good. She's a little busy, so they'll talk a little later. Alfredo agrees, since he arrived in the room without any warning, which, of course, took away attention. The woman's gaze switches again to the dress, which is already lying on the floor, instead of the table on which it was placed. Sitting down at the table, the heroine accepts the letter. The day after tomorrow, there will be a banquet in honor of the arriving knights. Everyone around, instead of discussing the banquet, is talking about the heroine and who she will be with, because they have turned their backs on her. It is incredibly interesting whether the girl will appear at the event, because due to the collapse, she is still in the palace. Some believe that the princess will not arrive because of her former lover and Miss Lurtella, who will also be there. Others, on the contrary, think that the lady will come only to look at the prince, who has still not been able to let go. Everyone around wants Ursia to arrive, because then there will be a show program at the holiday. It is incredible that the lady has lost all her status so quickly, so she must appear. Someone thinks that Pysantria will cry because she sees Nivea, and someone thinks about the scandal that they might start to think about. A smile appears on a sweet face. The blonde couldn't miss it, so she will give what the audience wants. Some will be hysterical with tears, and some may even faint from shame, but it will be worth it. All this does not mean that tricks will be done on behalf of Ursia. She made sure to make a better plan. There is a knock on the room, and then Azel appears from behind the door, smiling helpfully at the princess who called her. The heroine asks her friend to come a little closer to her, so that they can talk more calmly among themselves. The beauty gets up a little from her chair in order to whisper the necessary information into the ear of the maid, who seems to have understood everything. Lighting up with joy, the brunette promises that of course she will do everything possible to help. Naivia will not be a hindrance. Nodding, the blonde thanks the girl, who seems to have been almost the only one who has not yet turned away from her mistress. Secondary roles are also extremely important, so the girl must take care of the couple for the event. My thoughts are interrupted again by the noise outside. The girl waves her hand, indicating that the person is allowed to enter. The elderly butler bows politely, bringing forward the box of letters that arrived along with the previous ones. Grunting, the princess accepts one of the top letters, but then, after a few seconds, returns it to its place. Virgo asks to throw away all the mail that came to her, and in return send only one single important letter. The man accepts the item, hearing that if there are any more offers, he should just throw them away. The heroine decided long ago who to go with. This will be a mystery to everyone, but only for the time being. It's evening outside, so the lady gets up from her chair, leaving some documentation on the table. Sitting down on the soft bed, Ursia sighs heavily. The day seemed too long, so it wouldn't hurt to rest. Miss Lurtella will get what she deserves, because before this, everything that happened was just actions and innocent pranks. The lady hopes that Navia is looking forward to the banquet just like she is, because that is where an unforgettable surprise awaits her. From the very morning, there is noise in the castle which does not allow you to sleep. Preparations for the banquet are in full swing, approaching the end. If the event takes place in a palace, you won't even have to do anything special, because some people don't eat to fit into a dress. Virgo will have to do only the simplest thing, namely, begin preparing a plan that will be suitable for the destruction of Lurtella. Hiding around the corner, the heroine watches the figures that appear nearby. The servant sits on his knees, apologizing to Nivea. He thought that the thing was a trinket and not a princess's thing. The blonde moves away, saying that she is not angry with the young man, because she only had to ask to clarify the situation. The man holds out a brooch, to which the heroine asks in surprise where they managed to get the thing that belonged to the royal person. Miss Lurtella seems completely stupid, since she did not immediately recognize where this little thing came from. When Navia was pursuing the girl, she still made one of the most important mistakes, which helped in drawing up the plan. The princess dropped the brooch, which Ursia had picked up. She could not immediately understand what could be done with it. Raising the thing, the heroine squeezes it in her hands. It will come in handy, which means, just in case, you should definitely keep the brooch. Yesterday, the maiden called Ash to her again, but when he was about to leave, she made him stop. An excellent plan appeared in Pysantria's head, which promised to be wonderful in execution. Virgo promises that she will tell everything. Taking a little thing out of her pocket, the heroine hands over a brooch, saying that it belongs to the Marquise. The hero bows, promising that he will use the chance that the mistress gave. He has the power to do everything possible, even if something doesn't work out right away. Ash did not disappoint, therefore, following a strict plan. He shared his find with absolutely everyone around him, being with the servants. As soon as the rumors reached Naivia, she herself came to personally deal with the servant who dared to rob her, but he assured her that he had found the thing on the grass. The guy didn't dare say anything more in response, because he was sure that he would never dare to do something terrible. Looking into the eyes of the young lady, the man again repeats that he would never dare to rob his mistress. The heroine freezes, looking at her interlocutor with an enchanted gaze, which immediately speaks of her interest. Tears of their own accord begin to roll down the cheeks of the young man, who promises that he is not lying, which means he can be trusted. The girl's hand approaches the servant's face, while she herself asks if these are truly true words. Erzia peeks out from behind, but when she sees everything that is happening, she smiles, because she understands that the plan worked perfectly. The brother, who had long arrived at his father's estate, had already settled down when he was interrupted by a letter that arrived from the princess. Nodding, the young man accepts the paper, which was sent quite recently, and therefore related to the banquet. Having quickly read the contents of the letter, the guy orders the servants to prepare the horse on which the master will ride. Opening the closet, the blonde says that he was going to the capital, even if the horses were going to be prepared in the morning because of the banquet. The blue-eyed man turns, glaring menacingly at his assistant, who seems intent on pissing off his master. Bowing down, the man runs away, saying that he will arrange everything. Everyone in the estate had long ago realized that it was better to agree. Things were much better at the temple, but the monks were also preparing for the event. One of them asks the monk about the meeting with the princess. The smile seems cold. The man realizes that he is lucky because that very special day has finally arrived. Princess Ursha Pysantria was also ready to do everything necessary. She couldn't wait for the moment of revenge. The maid of honor who was collecting the empress asks what kind of shoes should be brought. They must be neat. Running from side to side, the maid tried to complete as many tasks as possible that she had to complete. The shoe ended up on the blonde's foot, so the maid asks permission to leave the chambers. Allowing her to leave, the heroine sadly looks after her. After the changes in the prophecy, everyone turned away from the princess because it was important to them. The butler, who remained nearby, tries to start a conversation. He notices the fact that the weather is beautiful outside. Leaning close to his ear, the man announces that His Highness and Miss Lurtella are heading into the hall. Clearing his throat, the acquaintance asks when the prince will arrive, who will keep the young lady company. As you know, the blonde is not the most punctual person, but it is better that he arrives before the dancing begins. One of my friends comes up, asking why the lady doesn't want to wear any jewelry, but it will make her look heavier. Looking at the knight, the princess is waiting for her dear guest. He will be the one who will be her date and who will dance with her. The maids who surrounded the girl chirped about how much they were worried about the arrival of that same companion. The beauty nods. She is more than confident in the man, so all that remains is to wait for that very moment. The girls are very worried, so the best solution would be to go for a walk while they all wait. Already at the front door, the ladies freeze, because someone, on the other hand, opened the doors, entering inside. The blonde man with wonderful eyes bows. He, like a true gentleman, will open the door for the maids, but he came to Erzia. The blonde freezes. She quietly pronounces the name of her brother, who appeared in the room completely unexpectedly. The man leans closer, joyfully greeting his sister, who is probably already tired of waiting for her companion. The couple had not seen each other for a very long time, because the last time they met, the girl was only 15 years old. The face hasn't changed at all. Extending his palm towards the heroine, the young man invites her to finally follow him into the hall. Entering the room where the banquet is taking place, the couple attracts many glances that cannot believe that Rias has arrived. Remaining calm and not showing a single emotion on her face, the heroine understands that the show will now begin. A whole crowd of girls has gathered around Lurtella, discussing desserts that the princess cannot try because of how tightly her corset was tightened. The castle is still fun, even without desserts, which can be replaced by other activities. The topic changes because one of the ladies says that the son of the Duke of Pysantria and Ursha Pysantria herself will arrive. Anger is instantly reflected on the face of the main character, who is annoyed by the former crown princess, who will not calm down. Just a minute ago, everyone in the hall was chatting enthusiastically, but the conversations were replaced by deathly silence that formed. It is easy to understand those around her because the lady was once the crown princess, but almost never appeared at banquets. Rias Pesantria, who spent the last 3 years at war, attracts even more attention to himself. Absolutely everyone in the empire knows such a famous name. It doesn't even surprise anyone how popular he is anymore. Since childhood, Rias has attracted a ton of attention, and not only because he is the heir of the duke. The boy received his mother's beauty. The guy began learning fencing at a very early age, and over time he increasingly honed his skills, which only improved. Having reached such heights, the young man received a sword from the emperor himself at the age of 16. No one would admire a man if all he did was swing a sword. He also had other values in his life. Rias is talented in paperwork, so he not only helped his father, but also participated in the management of the duchy, doing it quite skillfully. When the young man turned 20, he volunteered for the war because he did not intend to sit out and profit from someone else's glory. The brother defeated many enemies on the front line, so he was given a title in the kingdom of Sepia in which he was located. Of course, it became known in the kingdom that the hero was going to war. The girls began to write letters of complaint that were filled with tears. Remembering how the crowd of maidens missed her brother, the princess laughs lightly, no longer trying to restrain herself. The blonde asks his sister what made her laugh so much, to which Sia just waves her hand condescendingly. She remembered the old days. It was also quite funny for Virgo to watch how people around were whispering, but were not going to pull themselves together and come up to talk. The heroine decided not to tell her brother her entire plan, so it became interesting how much he knew. Nodding her head towards the tables, the girl promises that she will return very soon as she takes a glass of wine. Pushing through the crowd, which seems to be getting thicker, the heroine finally notices a servant with a tray. The man politely asks what milady wants, to which she simply silently accepts the glass from his hands. Nodding to the mistress, the servant moves towards Lurtella, which means everything is going according to plan. He says that the young man, struck by the beauty of the girl, asked to pass the glass. Grunting, the beauty pretends that she likes it. Very soon the first dance will be announced, and everything will be known there. One glass won't hurt, even if you have to hit the dance floor very soon. The heroine is confident that she will cope. Looking to the side, the girl smiles. Navia will love the taste because the drink is easy to drink and beautifully sweet. It is impossible to notice that something was added there. Approaching her brother again, the girl nods. Everything is ready, which means that there will only be more interesting events. Miss Lurtella drinks, trying to swallow as much as possible. If this goes on, you can understand that the event will end just fine. The man quietly asks Ursha if it's really just wine, to which she easily nods. I also had to add a little medicine. Grunting, the young man looks into his sister's eyes. He doesn't believe it a little because he knows Ursha like the back of his hand. Straightening her tie, the heroine notices the fact that the drug was ordered from her father, which means it was quite good. At first, the princess herself wanted to mix the potion of truth, but nothing came of it due to the complex recipe. Looking at the girl, who, staggering a little, was only a few steps away from them, the heroine understands that it is time to reap the benefits. Approaching very close to her rival's face, the lady says that she has spread all those dirty rumors throughout the palace. Milady shrugs because she knew everything. Nothing worked because the girl had to lose her temper. Smiling disgustingly, the beauty assures the heroine that she absolutely doesn't care about her every action. As soon as Navia takes the throne, she will try to bring the maiden to her knees and properly disgrace the future empress. It turns out that the drug still worked exactly as the plan required. The show is just beginning. Now everyone present will understand who the main character is in the castle and why Lurtella behaves this way. For some reason, the prince didn't think twice and replaced the queen with this girl who doesn't understand anything. This was mistake number 1. My head recalls the very day when the girl first entered the banquet hall. She walked arm in arm with the prince. The emperor and empress always danced first, while the prince's couple danced next in seniority. The couple always danced before the others, which did them great honor. The sleepless nights were finally paying off. The girl doesn't care at all about the memories, because now the brunette has personally destroyed everything that was between them. But there was one but. The heroine took so long to become a princess, so she worked day and night. We can't let Lurtella ruin this. From that very moment, Ursha decided that everyone would play by her rules, which were invented for a reason. Stepping back, the girl asks Lady Lurtella to calm down and not make unnecessary noise right in the banquet hall. Holding out the handkerchief, the maiden asks her to be careful, because no one would want her to fall by pure accident. Naivia chuckles. She warned of consequences because she would never allow anyone to treat her like that. Everything that will be done will be for the good of the girl. They didn't even notice how the atmosphere in the hall had changed. The princess carefully grabs her interlocutor's shoulder. She seems to have had a little too much, so you need to be as careful as possible. Jumping to the side and throwing off her palm, the blonde rudely asks to leave her alone, bursting into a menacing scream. It is strange that the girl remained too calm even after the drug. Perhaps this is just her true colors. Frowning, the heroine asks if the former princess knows one person who has been close to her lately. Virgo does not understand who we are talking about. I would really like to step aside and ask in more detail, but now everyone is watching. Efforts to subdue Miss Lurtella continue. Instead of passing and resting, the lady hits her interlocutor's hand. The heroine takes back her palm, feigning a groan, because she really was a little hurt by the blow. The girl, on the contrary, asks the princess not to try to pass off what is not true as the truth, because she almost didn't touch her. People around are talking among themselves, discussing the behavior of the young lady, because it is not worthy of someone with such a title. No one understood why the girl was chosen for a new prediction and giving, which for some reason had changed. Out of nowhere, Azel appeared, who was on edge because she promised to protect the princess. Lurtella has no right to behave like this. The heroine asked the maid to bring her a glass of water, and she immediately ran to fight Ursia, who did not deserve it. Turning to the maid, the heroine looks with an uninterested gaze while she talks about how the princess is the best. The girl grabs the dress of the maid, who doesn't seem to quite understand what could happen to her in the next minutes. Trying to move away, the brunette begs to let her go so as not to harm in vain. God chose someone else, so someone like Lady Lurtella cannot fulfill the prophecy. No longer able to withstand such ignorance, the princess raises her hand and with all her strength brings her hand into contact with her companion's cheek. The brunette immediately grabs the bruised area, amazed, looking at the floor because she was just called a commoner. Sitting down opposite the girl, Navia warns the maid not to approach her again so as not to make things worse for herself. Passantria, located nearby, watches what is happening. Miss performed her role perfectly, so now she has shown her true colors. No longer intending to tolerate humiliation toward her friend, the princess steps forward and begins to speak. Azel interrupts the beauty. According to her, if Lurtella were the maiden from the prophecy, she would not have hit an innocent person. The heroine tries to come forward to force Portuba to remain silent. She didn't go according to plan, so we had to save her quickly. Halfway there, Navia was the one who happened to be nearby and, as a result, struck the cheek in the same way as the maid. Turning away, the girl tries to open her eyes. The cheek turned red, which can be seen for kilometers. People around are whispering in surprise about how horribly the child of prophecy is behaving. She dared to ruin everything. Not understanding what just happened, the heroine examines her hand, watching her actions in amazement. It seems that the girl has begun to come to her senses, so we need to report to the Duke as soon as possible that the drug has an expiration date. The veil fell, and the blonde's true insides came out. She lay on the floor, looking around in surprise. People won't stop talking, starting to speculate. It seems to many that the oracle was simply mistaken for placing such a person. Everyone from the very beginning doubted the veracity of the prophecy, which seemed to be a fake. But if this is true, the maiden will be able to fix something. The girl extends her hand to help. This causes Lurtella to fall into complete terror. The girl looks around, listening to the rumors that are creeping. No one is able to come to terms with what happened. Obviously, the heroine wanted to get rid of the princess too much, so she fulfills her silent request by letting go of her hand. Falling rapidly, Navia realizes that the collision will be harsh because a tower of glass goblets is visible behind her. It seems that what happens next will hurt, so it will feel great right now. And then too. Without having time to say anything, the maiden came to her senses in the arms of His Highness, who pulled her closer to him. The man, for some reason, did not help Lurtella, but instead chose his former lover who no longer meant anything. Thanks to the brunette, the former princess was not harmed a bit. She just can't understand what exactly the prince is up to. Navia bursts into tears. She can't believe that everything that happened to her and only through her fault. The heroine, trying to the end to play a good role, bends down next to her rival, extending a helping hand to her. No reciprocal kindness is felt, because the beauty screams that Ursha is to blame for everything, who set up all the horror. Asking if the princess was hurt, Pysantria steps aside because the maiden herself rises from her seat. It seems that the girl said some name that was heard for the first time. It was necessary to find out who exactly this mysterious man was. The blonde approaches her friend, inviting her to rest in her chambers, to which she receives a new portion of negativity. The girl smiles and then passes by the heroine. She promises that she will not simply leave all this unpunished. Looking in the trail of the maiden, Urzia promises that it will be so, but she does not care whether Naivia is from the prophecy, because such behavior is not acceptable. The servants and those who arrived on the sides again start talking about how the Marchioness will not be a future princess because she simply cannot cope with her role. Forcing everyone into silence, the girl threateningly asks if her friend is facing the punishment she deserves. God himself could not have chosen Virgo to be the one who would defend the empire and help everyone around. Now everything has become much more clear. It doesn't take a sage to realize that there was something fishy about the scheme. On the day of the event, everything was already enough. So all that remained was to wait for a response from Miss Lurtella. The guards take Navia by the arms, asking her to come with them. The prince does not move and does not help his new lover even after everything that happened. Something strange is definitely going on between the couple, because they didn't exchange a single word and didn't come together. Attention is drawn to a voice from the side calling Sia's name to speak. It turned out to be the brother, who realized that the girl had suffered greatly. He noticed a scarlet stain, so he brought napkins. Assuring that everything is fine, the girl asks not to worry. She will not agree to treat the wound. The man nods in response, but still recommends doing the processing after the banquet to be completely sure of safety. The conversation is interrupted by someone from behind calling the princess's name. They could not allow themselves to be touched on the shoulder. Azel stands nearby with his brother, quietly asking if Ursha is in pain. They disappeared from sight not long ago, but have now appeared. The Virgin had not seen Portuba for a long time because he was, after all, the prince's assistant. The girl didn't want to have anything to do with him. Bowing his head, the man greets the girl as a crown princess, even if she has not held that status for a long time. The young man's attitude has not changed at all. It seemed that everything that happened had no effect on his opinion, which is why Rubella behaved the way he did. Nodding, the girl notices the fact that they really haven't seen each other for a very long time, due to the fact that she almost never saw the prince anymore. Rubel hasn't changed at all. He still behaved respectfully, trying to please everyone, but at the same time he was embarrassed by judgment. Among all the prince's assistants, the young man is the kindest. He is a great person, but he is too emotional, which leads to certain difficulties in his work. It is because of such a complex character that the guy will never become the closest to His Highness. But the princess does not know this for sure, since she has never worked with him. You can immediately tell that these two people are related, because she and Azel are very similar in their kindness and innocence. Moving closer to the maiden, the blonde extends her hand to examine the wound. She asks why the maid intervened. It all happened because the brunette was afraid that the mistress would get hurt. The girl is grateful for the rescue, but she would not want anyone to suffer. The princess asks not to worry because it is not the maid's fault. She was simply worried about her condition without any bad intentions. Turning to Sir Rubel, Ursha asks him to go home early. This will be the right decision in order to gather strength. The banquet continues. The former princess was surrounded by noble ladies who were trying to find out from Her Highness how she was feeling. Everyone sympathizes with the young lady. They thought that Miss Lurtella was chosen by God, but it turned out that she was just pretending, for which she would receive her punishment. Raising her glass to take a drink, the Virgin thanks for such concern, because it is incredibly important to her that everything be exactly like this. Many believe that Naivia will get what she deserves and the prince will do it. The girl cannot but agree, because it is the prince who must do this. The ladies will not calm down, talking about how sad the prince has been lately. Perhaps this is due to the fact that the prophecy separated him from his beloved. Everything is clear, and this became clear a very long time ago. The young lady did not leave the palace either, only because of the one she loved with all her heart. The couple is often seen together, so this is probably why the rumors started. Nobody knows the truth. The lady had long known that people around were whispering about her and the prince, but she had never heard any details. Urzia really loved the young man, so she thought that he experienced exactly the same feelings. Now she wasn't sure. In truth, the heroine never knew the truth, but for some reason right now she thought about it so much. Nothing else matters, and even if the future emperor loves her, she no longer feels anything. Despite everything that is spinning in my head non-stop, it is difficult to understand why the young man is always nearby at the right moment. Hoping to save his sister from an unpleasant situation, the brother approaches from behind, calling His Highness by name. Nodding, the man greets Duke Rias. They haven't seen each other for a long time, so this reaction is quite logical. As the young man approaches, he bows his head as a sign of respect. 3 years passed, but they were not felt at all. The girl can only rejoice at how quickly her brother arrived, because she and the prince get along well. Now she won't be left alone with him. Rias is only 3 years older than His Highness, meaning they can be considered almost the same age. Previously, this small age difference was felt quite strongly because the prince could never defeat his brother in a single battle. The guy wielded the sword so well that the emperor gave him a standing ovation. He admired such abilities. The king asked the young man to become a sparring partner for his son, who was just learning to wield a sword. The brunette nods, saying that His Majesty is saddened by the fact that he could not meet one of the best knights. For some reason, the young man is trying to shield his sister from the prince, as if he is afraid of their fight. He promises that he will immediately go to meet the king. The lady is in heels, but she hardly sees the prince's face, so she only hears him asking about the collapse on the road, which was almost dismantled. It was not easy to clear the rubble and restore the road after everything that happened, so the young man can only praise the servants for the good job they did. Nothing will work out anyway because the brunette still wants to talk to the princess. She asks her brother to move away. Looking directly into Rias's eyes, the girl seems to be trying to convince him that everything will be completely fine. The conversation will be about what the virgin should do, hoping for a resolution to the situation, so there is nothing to regret here. The virgin examines the young man from head to toe. She did not immediately notice the hairstyle that a man wears only to banquets, and the suit that his beloved gave him. The young man never appears in public in the same outfit, so such an attack does not look like the prince himself. Today was the first appearance of His Highness with the new princess, who in the end did not behave properly. Interrupting the beauty's thoughts, the man asks if he can talk to the beauty alone, to which she nods. Virgo is glad that this is a request and not an order, because the brunette politely asked if this could be done without any pressure. The guy knows how to take advantage of his position because even in such a situation the girl cannot refuse the prince. Retreating into one of the corridors, the couple stops so that no one has the opportunity to overhear the conversation. Leaning against the column, the maiden reminds that if you want to talk to her, you can make an official request. The girl remembers, as always, running to the prince at the first call he gave into the air. They hardly saw each other with the young man because of work and responsibilities, so when the opportunity arose, the beauty rushed as fast as she could. This happened every time he wanted to meet. The girl never refused because she was afraid. Coming closer and stopping just a few centimeters away, the prince mockingly asks if he really needs an official request to talk. The guy leans even closer. He warned his former lover not to go too far, but as usual, she did not listen. Raising his hand to the princess's cheek, the man once again asks if she will obey him when he orders something. The beauty freezes, as if rooted to the spot. Recently, His Highness began to allow himself too much. Removing her hand, the blonde repeats what she said earlier. She will not forgive Miss Lurtella for the insult she has caused. The girl is not going to sit idly by when she is treated like this, because she is no longer the crown princess who will remain silent, but Pysantria. Navia acted like a little child when she put on the whole show. If a man doesn't want to watch something like this, it's better to figure it out. Virgo is about to leave, but she is stopped. The prince grabs the hand of the princess, who looks surprised. The guy slowly leans right over the hand and then kisses the back of it as a sign of respect or something. The heroine, at the speed of light, withdraws her palm, which literally burns due to strange sensations that are impossible to read. Looking menacingly at her interlocutor, the maiden warns him. She hopes this will never happen again. Turning away, the princess looks at the young man one last time, and then quickly leaves that very place, heading to the middle of the hall. It would be better if the prince did not do what he did, but thought with his own head before destroying everything that was possible. The girl cannot understand why the guy did what has now interfered. It seems that he never changed, but the heroine herself changed. One can only hope that one day the heart will stop beating so wildly when a beauty looks at a man. What happened is enough. That's not all that happened, but since the prince and Lurtella are gone, it means everything has become easier. According to the rules of the ball, the first dance would now belong to Rias and Ursia, who were supposed to go second. Lurtella is not finished yet, but so far everything is going strictly according to plan without any deviations that could interfere. The banquet will last the whole night, but it is better to hurry because no one knows what else could happen. Behind the beauty, steps and rustling are heard, which could be incredibly frightening if the girl did not know in advance who was there. Ash throws off his hood and steps into the light. He didn't want to disturb Her Highness, but he had urgent news. The princess ordered the servant to follow Naivia, so the guy obediently waited until the maiden was alone to console her. In return for kindness, the beauty tried to get the man into bed, and even if they had nothing, it didn't mean anything. The girl simply passed out because of the drug they gave her. The main character does not immediately understand what exactly we are talking about this time. His lordship handed over the jar. No one knows about the side effects, especially since excess can have irreversible consequences. Frowning, the maiden asks if Lurtella is dead. Perhaps this was precisely the important news that the servant wanted to report. As a result, the princess was simply unconscious, that is, we can assume that she fell asleep. He examined his companion, so everything is in order. Nodding, the heroine relaxes a little, because no matter how much she hates her rival, she doesn't need any problems. Ash came on another matter, and it was all tied to the priest about whom they had already reported. He is also involved in one case. The man is interrupted by a rustling sound and a voice that wants something from the princess. Immediately putting on his hood, the young man turns around. By forcing the guy to squat, the maiden promises that she will distract the one who arrived, and Ash can simply try not to make a sound. The servant is even larger in size and height than the main character, so hiding him will not be easy, which means you need to come up with something. The door opens slowly, making your insides clench. Alfredo appears on the balcony and blinks his eyes in surprise. Smiling, the princess tries to hide her nervousness, which makes her almost shake for fear that someone will notice. Without moving from her place, the maiden waits until the young man himself comes closer. He asks what is his sister doing here. Noticing someone behind, the young man looks menacingly at the figure. He asks who is behind the young lady. This is not so important, because the lady wants to know much more about how Venice ended up here, because she was sure that she had locked the doors. Turning away, the guy apologizes. He doesn't seem to be in the mood, but he didn't think of breaking in and thereby interfering with what was happening. Smiling, the guy reminds that only members of the imperial family are allowed on the terrace, which means that he is allowed. The former crown princess had completely forgotten that she was no longer allowed to be here. She used to like to come to the balcony to relax. His brother was outside, so the young man decided that there was no one there. He had nothing to apologize for, even if it hurt to hear it. If the beauty had not forgotten the rules, she would never have come here. She was aware of the fact that she no longer had access. The guy smiles, clinging to the girl's hand, but after a second he looks menacingly at the hood, again asking who is behind her. Instead of answering the question, the beauty asks the young man if he would like to have tea tomorrow on the terrace. The man lowers the heroine's hand, sadly looking somewhere to the side. Virgo cannot believe that she was just refused in plain text. Realizing that it's not entirely customary to behave this way, the brunette quickly gathers his strength and nods actively because he wants to. Smiling, the princess promises that she will prepare everything, and tomorrow she will wait for the guy at her place to enjoy time together. The man nods, saying that they will meet soon. Looking at the back of the hood again, he involuntarily clenches his fist. Turning around before leaving, the brunette assures that everything is fine because his brother will not come here. Ash stands up, asking if it's okay if they just let the potential witness go, to which he is reassured. Alfredo would never go against his childhood friend, so there's no need to worry about such little things. Turning again to the interlocutor, the lady asks to continue where they left off. She wants to know about the priest. A man standing below watches the terrace where the two are standing and talking about him. The blonde takes the hood off his head and asks if everything is going according to plan. He seems quite confident of his imminent victory. The princess will come out and come down very soon, which means that the conversation will also take place at exactly the right moment. The priest smiles. He has been waiting for this day for a very long time, and finally, after everything that has happened, he can reap the benefits. Rias, who remained in the hall, is talking to the ladies, who seem to be pouring into him like an endless stream to talk. The young man notices the princess approaching. Asking the girl to wait for him, he goes to his sister. Being next to Sia, the blonde leans over and quietly asks what happened to her, since she returned so abruptly. Whispering something in her ear, the lady says that she has learned new information about the new priest. It turns out that he came to Lady Lurtella, and it was quite recently. It is strange that the priest from the temple needed something from the daughter of the Marquise, who no longer has anything to do with it. Virgo is the new child of a prophecy that has come true, but has only now changed. Nobody knows, but maybe there was something more going on there than just talking. The door was closed, which meant the couple could hug and kiss. They could be in cahoots together. The situation takes a different turn. Ash said that he hid in the closet and saw everything with his own eyes. Lurtella was on the drug, so she shouldn't remember it. The high priest is forbidden to love, and he is also forbidden to marry and have children. He took an oath for this. Even a kiss for such a person is considered something terrible, because he has no right to it. Noticing that her brother has been staring at one point for 5 minutes, the maiden calls his name. The guy thought about how much his sister had grown. When the young man left, the girl was still very small, and now she had grown so much that it was impossible to believe it. Sighing, the heroine agrees. She was old enough to marry the crown prince, who proposed to her. Leaning over, the man kisses his sister on the cheek. For some reason, he, like mom and dad, always do exactly this, as if providing support. Looking into the maiden's eyes, the young man asks if she was very upset because of the prophecy. It was absolutely true. Sighing, the heroine promises that she is no longer upset. Regardless of how much of an impact it has, she doesn't care. Smiling, the brother nods. It is important for him that his sister does not feel resentment and disappointment for the rest of her life. The woman was worried about something else. As the crown princess, she looked down on her father. But now she doesn't even know how to behave. The man does not share his experiences because in his understanding everything is very simple. You just need to behave as usual, and then happiness will not pass you by. There won't be any problems, so don't worry so much, even if everything seems terrible. Everyone always believed that the girl was taller than the rest, because no one in the Pisantria family could compare with such talent. Mom always said that the emperor stole the most precious treasure from their family, which showed her love for her daughter. At the same time, my mother then threw glasses at the wall out of rage, which did not allow her to calm down. It was funny to remember, but it seemed to my brother that then the blonde was ready to throw even a whole castle. The girl is not so upset. Previously, she only saw her family a couple of times a year, but they were always happy. For some reason, everyone else considers this family to be tough and cold-blooded, because it is just a mask that is visible from the outside. Nobody knows what's inside the family. They are always friendly to each other and are incredibly happy to be in such an environment. Very soon the beauty will be returning home, so parents should expect new changes. The precious treasure is going to turn the entire castle upside down and then return home safe and sound. Interrupting the conversations, the blonde turns towards the clock. It will be midnight very soon. The clock shows that there are only 10 minutes left, which means it's time to go back. The young man looks at his sister, who asks if he will go with her. The girls behind them glare at the couple with angry glances. Smiling, the guy assures that he will be glad to be with Ursula, who is already almost always busy, just like himself. Virgo waves her hands, saying that the blonde will be able to stay longer, but he objects. He has something to say to his sister. The couple is going to hurry so as not to be late, so they quickly head forward along one of the corridors. The guy is the first to say that he did not expect that priest to have such a relationship with Lady Lurtella. It is worth remembering that the girl is undoubtedly beautiful, but this cannot be worth breaking the oath because of her, because he will not receive either power or money. It is also confusing that the age difference between the couple is also not small at all, so this adds questions. We need to report to the temple as soon as possible, but such a plan will not work. They will begin to deny everything, and then the situation will be lost. The brother nods because he didn't immediately think about the fact that they needed evidence. Surely they are hiding and leaving no traces. You need to fabricate evidence to finally get what you need, but for this, the man will need a sample of the priest's handwriting. Do not forget the fact that the prophecy may turn out to be completely false. It could have been faked. The maiden only hinted at this fact during the ball, and Lurtella had already turned pale, which proves the fact that she is hiding something. It was the new priest who announced the new prophecy. Something will remain unclean because usually the head of the temple or a select few receive the news. The prophecy changed just as the head of the church changed, leaving even more clues to catch on. The guy turns and then stops. He asks if the maiden wants to know what can be done. You can forge the handwriting and leave a note in which the priest confesses his sins, and then Rias will kill him, making it look like murder. In the note, the young man will talk about his relationship with Lady Lurtella and that the prophecy is in fact false. In order to twist everything as the truth, it will be necessary to write that the priest was pushed to take this step by a feeling of guilt, that he went against God. If the couple kills the man, then of course it will become easier, because everything will end, but this cannot be done. Nodding, the young man agrees. The one who kills the priest will be overtaken by God's punishment, which he would not want to receive, which means that all that remains is not to interfere. Looking into her brother's eyes, the girl begs him to write just a couple of letters in his handwriting, because it will help her in another way. The young man nods. This will be enough, especially since the priest will remain completely calm. The conversation is interrupted by one of the servants, who hurries to Rias to report something important. Something happened, so we need to go through it in order to figure it out. The servants cannot figure it out on their own, so the Duke is needed. Smiling, the girl promises that everything will be fine. It seems like something is urgent, so she just takes a walk at this time. The lady moves into the distance, into the very depths of the garden. Too much has happened today, so there is not a single guard there to interfere. The girl approaches the edge of the lake, which reflects all the lights from the castle and the rooms that are around. The view is worth it. The man quietly creeps up from behind and grabs the woman, asking her to be patient for just a minute. She must go with him. Someone special wants to meet the main character, but Ursha does not share his desires. The girl stepped on the boy's foot with her heel, who instantly jumped back, starting to writhe from pain in his leg. Just about to run, the maiden is stopped again. The guy gets up, grabbing his beautiful hair, thereby pulling the princess towards him. The girl understands that there is no way she can avoid being captured, so she grabs the jar that was in her pocket as an emergency. The next second, the beauty opens the lid and pours the liquid directly onto the attacker's face and body. The man lets out a wild scream as the contents reach his skin. An empty can falls on the grass next to his feet. The heroine quickly removes the bandage from her mouth and slams it with all her might into the guy's face, who lets out another scream. The virgin takes out a blade and hits the enemy with all her might, asking who he is. Anger splashes in the eyes. The girl wants to find out who the important person they wanted to take her to is. She's about to strike again, but a voice stops her. It seems that the girl needs exactly the person who has just arrived. A man in a white robe stands just 2 steps away. Looking at the maiden, he orders to throw the dagger, and then explanations will be given immediately, to which a refusal is heard. The guy has no other choice anymore. Gathering some white energy into his hand, he reaches out to the man who is lying on the ground. Raising the servant, the man places his palm on the wound, which immediately begins to heal. The blonde backs away in horror. She's never seen anything like this before, but it's not hard to remember where it came from. White hair makes it clear everything that is happening. Smiling, the young man talks about how glad he is to meet him and introduces himself as Azriel. His name doesn't say anything, so the next step is for him to remove the hood from his head. The girl can't believe that this is exactly the one she wanted to finish off at some point. He is standing right in front of her. White hair, which is worn only by those with divine power, as well as blue eyes and pale skin, are the card of the head of the temple, which even the emperor is forced to reckon with. The guy seems to be talking, but it's worth asking what he forgot here. The priest treated him very rudely, so there is no point in groveling in front of him. Smiling, the blonde says that he did all this just to meet the young lady. Extending his palm, the young man straightens his hair, saying that it was completely disheveled during the battle. The voice is full of care and admiration. The man carefully strokes the pale face, which is so different from the rest. Leaning closer, Azriel asks if the maiden is scared. The fear should have passed after he arrived at her place. Throwing away her palm, the girl notices the fact that the guy didn't just come to chat, so he must say what he needs. Nodding his head, the head says that he wants to discuss something. That was the #1 reason he was here. Nobody knows anything about the head of the church. No one knows whether he is a man or a woman, or how old he is. The heroine never thought that she would meet the blonde under such circumstances, or that she would meet at all. The garden is not the best place for discussion, so it is worth going a little further and finding a more suitable setting. Refusing, the heroine demands an explanation as to why they tried to kidnap her. All this is because perhaps the guy just wanted to get to know the princess better. He tried to act quietly, but she was much stronger. For some reason, the priest thought that it would be much easier to kidnap a princess who had spent her entire life in the palace. But it turned out that this was not the case. There is no one around who could resist the priest. Otherwise, if even a hair falls from his head, the hero will experience very severe torment. If you show weakness, then you can easily become a victim, but the guy has absolutely no weaknesses. The main thing is to remain calm, so the girl asks why the head did not send her a request for a meeting. The young man wanted to do without formalities, but the lady does not want to repeat it twice. If you have something to say, you need to say it directly. Sighing, the priest says that he doesn't care. The princess can behave as she wants. You can't look away, but the sensations are not at all the same as when the heroine looks into the eyes of the prince. The young man seems to judge with his gaze. Looking into the lady's eyes, the young man asks if she will become a new lady for him. If she is a child of prophecy, there is no point in refusing. The girl is sorry, but the prophecy has changed a month ago, so Miss Lurtella is now the chosen one. Spinning the dagger that the man took from the lady, the guy laughs. Nobody can believe what happened. It's easy to get hurt with such a weapon if you make even one wrong move. I can't believe Azrael treats him so easily. The priest learned this, someone not in the temple. The lady heard that it is different from the previous ones, but not so much. By saying a resounding yes, the maiden makes it clear that she truly believes that the prophecy has changed itself. Later, the opinion changed, and the young man probably wondered why. She has a story to tell. Azrael will like the information that will be given, but in return he wants to get something necessary and well used. The girl wants to receive equally important information, to which the priest nods. He agrees to the deal. It's a little late, so the man says goodbye. The interlocutor hopes that next time everything will start less harshly. Turning away, the guy swears that this won't happen again, so there's no need to worry so much. Smiling, the man wishes the lady good night. He holds out his palm, expecting the princess to follow the rules of etiquette. Getting what he expected, the blonde carefully leans down and kisses the back of his hand. The man builds up a ball of energy in his hand and then extends it towards the lady. His blessing will be as a sign of apology. The couple disappears from sight, leaving the maiden completely alone in the garden. She tries to understand everything that happened to her. The maid who takes on the evening dress notices with horror the red spots. As you can see, the princess is fine and not injured. The girl was incredibly tired because the day was too busy. She sends everyone to their rooms. The eyes close on their own, preventing you from concentrating on anything other than sleep. Virgo puts her hand to her cheek with delight, noticing that it no longer hurts. Most likely, healing came with a blessing. The hand that had to accept the energy no longer glows, although in the first few minutes, everything was exactly like that. The lady leans back on the bed. The priest who was hurt was also fine thanks to Azrael. The priest also took the dagger, which was always in his pocket. Virgo is going to be a little different and preferably sharper. There is a noise behind the door, followed by a steady knock. Rising from the bed, the girl asks who arrived at such a late hour. Straightening her hair, the lady asks what happened. She's not a princess anymore, so there's no point in bothering her. The maid of honor appeared nearby, saying that the prince wanted to meet the lady. He asked to bring her to his room. It seems that words were not enough, even if the heroine explained everything very clearly. Sighing heavily, the girl agrees. If the words were not clear, then you will have to explain again. The girl leads the former crown princess down the corridor. The lady had not been in the crown prince's room for a very long time. Now, walking into that same room, the heroine for some reason remembered that she had not been there from the very moment she was notified of the breakup. There are too many memories in the castle, and therefore, wherever you go, you can build a whole chain. Looking at the window in the corridor, the maiden remembers how exactly she stood with the prince and discussed some kind of book. The place seemed to attract the heroine, even without any explanation. She moves closer while a woman from behind calls out to her. Turning away, the heroine nods. There is nothing like that there, so you shouldn't focus your attention. The guy's room was included in this endless list as something special. I didn't even want to go there. The maid of honor knocks, saying that she has brought Ursia. Every time she was here, something new came to life in her. Every time my heart was ready to jump out of my chest, no matter how many different emotions were present. It was on the sofas in the room that the boy did cute, childish things that were completely out of character for him, and also whispered sweet words. The little girl was definitely happy then because she liked it, but even that had its price. The girl liked it when the guy called the princess affectionately by name and prepared all sorts of goodies, but now it made no sense. The man standing in a robe near the window doesn't even turn around. The lady coughs behind him, saying what her name was. The young man turns, asking the young lady to sit on one of the sofas for a conversation. Sitting down on the prepared place, the lady asks why she was invited to the hall. She didn't want to go. There is a prolonged silence in the room, which now seems like a particle of the air in which everything floats. It seems that the man is not going to talk, but even in this case, the lady had an idea. She asks if the prince was with Lady Lurtella. There is no response, but the prince seems unaware of Nevia's relationship with the high priest. Even if he knows, it won't help him. The lady remained the same. She pretends that she doesn't care about anything, even if deep down in her soul she has completely different feelings. It is this face that shows that the prince has now become just a shadow of his former happiness. The lady freezes. He seems afraid of what Lady Lurtella will say, but this seems more absurd than reality. Trying to move away, Ursha asks to remove his hand, to which he receives a strange answer. The guy is not sure whether he should do this, the lady asked, and it doesn't matter whether the guy wants it or not. She won't repeat the same thing twice. Throwing back her fingers, thereby causing anger, the lady asks His Highness to go back to his new lover. Getting very close, the guy confidently asks if it's true that Navia is still bothering her. The lady continues to say, His Highness, even when sitting alone with him in his own room. She seemed to be very affected by what happened. The lady still thinks about the princess who took her place. This is no longer a question, but something else, because the young man starts shouting. Glaring angrily at peasantry, the man asks if she is going to leave the castle or if it was a fake. Trying not to reveal her true emotions, the lady just nods. This is no longer the place for her. It was the prince who gave the desire to do this because he informed about the breakup. There is nothing else to do on the estate, and there is no reason left. Urzia did not find answers to other questions, but answered this one quite willingly, which seems strange. The young man thought that by calling him to his room, he would receive a different scenario of events, but it seems that his hopes were not justified. For some reason, His Highness treats the heroine in such a cruel way, even if she did not deserve it. Turning away, the lady asks if that was all the prince who called her had to say. Pesantria is really doing well despite the fact that the couple has separated for a long time. The reaction was also not justified. A man has the right to ask such questions in these circumstances because, according to him, he can do absolutely anything. Smiling, the lady laughs. The guy says it's all as if he is with her and they love each other. This man is completely incorrigible. The guy turns away. He tells the lady that she can do as she sees fit, and this is the second time with such a remark. The lady can no longer stand this whole show because it is beyond her strength. All the accusations and the way the guy gets angry are infuriating because Ursula lived her whole life just for the sake of the prince. The lady bows her head and then quietly says that she no longer needs His Highness. He doesn't deserve her love. The prince has changed his princess but still wants his former flame to tell him that she needs him. The heroine puts pressure on the patient, but it's deserved. It was the young man who decided to break off their relationship, so he should not regret anything. Even the prince himself managed to forget this truth, so now he is trying to involve Pesantria, which is not to blame for anything. The blonde can pretend that this did not happen, however. According to the majority, one should not trust the management of the country to a person with a short memory. No longer able to withstand such pressure, the young man turns sharply, shouting Ursha's name and her full surname. That is the lady's name, and she is the one who almost gave him her name, and is also the ex-fiancé who was jilted. Virgo almost became the owner of one of the most noble surnames in the world, but she doesn't need it. Stepping back, the woman sighs in disappointment. She shouldn't have shown her true emotions. The heroine doesn't want this, especially since nothing can be changed in the current situation, but she no longer has the strength to restrain herself. The lady did everything that was required of her without any mistakes. She tried to be the one that people would like. The lady did everything to become the empress, followed all the words, but in the end the prince simply broke off the engagement. As she turns to say something else, the girl feels her hand being grabbed and pulled forward. If the man were asked to reconsider the decision again, everything would be completely different. He's sorry. The prince has no right to say something like that when he did it to a princess who didn't deserve it. The lady turned out to be too cruel because in the end she can tell everyone that she didn't even shed a single tear and just leave. Smiling through her tears, the blonde notices how selfish the prince was and remains. Wiping away the tears that are streaming down her face, the lady turns around in order to run out of the room as quickly as possible. The door closes with a slam, leaving the young man completely alone in an empty room and Ursula leaning against the wall. The woman is trying to hold back her true emotions, but she has already shown them. Tears cannot be stopped. Nothing will change, and this becomes immediately clear. His Highness will live a happy life with his new lady. Ursula, in turn, will be obliged to praise the couple who will become emperor and empress. This could be a good script, but the girl simply cannot leave everything as it is without any changes. The sound of the window shutters attracts attention. Virgo turns around, hoping that it is just the wind that moves so noisily. The beauty freezes because a priest appeared at the window and jumped into the room. He smiles. As he sits down just a few steps from the recline, the man says that he has a very important conversation to discuss. The guy left so willfully, and now he has unexpectedly returned, which makes me doubt it. He apologizes to his new lover. The guy looks at the beauty, extending his hand. He doesn't know what happened to Ursula, but perhaps if he can console her, he can win the princess's heart. Taking her hand away, the beauty takes a few steps back. His Holiness is behaving strangely. The young man wants to say something, but falters when he notices a red mark on the wrist of the young lady who is standing directly in front of him. A sad look examines the hand, which seems to need someone to heal the bruise, albeit a slight one. The man bends over his hand, quietly saying that it is unacceptable to treat the body of such a beautiful lady in this way. The heroine doesn't even try to object because a bright flash of energy takes away all unspoken words. A smile immediately appears on the good-natured face. The blonde is just glad that he managed to heal his beloved. Nodding, the lady thanks for what happened to her because she did not expect to receive healing so soon. Smiling lightly, the young man says that everything is fine, and then apologizes again for bursting into someone else's bedroom like that. Taking a moment to notice the open door and window, the lady asks how the priest entered the room. The man turns to the window frame. Probably the beauty saw him climb through the window and jump from the sill. The heroine no longer even knows what else this man is capable of. An ordinary person wouldn't have climbed that high. Chuckling, the chapter says that there was a tree there, and even if that seems like it's still a pretty high mark, he had it easy. The girl sighs heavily, but promises that she will no longer ask stupid questions. This is definitely a win. Still inserting what is being said, the beauty asks why the guy came here. Grunting, the young man notices the fact that he thought that the girl would simply kick him out or call the guards at that very second. Whereas the beauty promises that if he doesn't do it, the woman will do it right away. Laughing, the blonde says that he thought about the chance that the princess would remain on the throne and amaze everyone with her beauty. Instead of following the usual solution, the lady switched, leaving Azriel shocked. Virgo freezes, asking what is meant, but in the end she sees only a hand extended in front of her. The guy was surprised when Ursula took the sword and without thinking swung it at the priest's servant. What happened just recently was quite an impressive sight, despite how the servant felt afterwards. The lady is too tired, so stepping back she says that there was no need to get into the room just for this. There is something more important, which is why the man came so late in the evening. The wind from the end makes the maiden shrink. The guy instantly comes closer and takes off his cloak, throwing it over his lover's shoulders. He still found the real reason. Azriel came to take possession of the princess. The mouth opens on its own in surprise. The beauty mindlessly stares at her interlocutor, trying to understand and accept what was said. The guy sees that Pysantria is lonely and bad. He wants to be there to wipe away the tears, and then be the one to win the heart. From the very beginning, it seemed to the hero that the blonde was too weak to be alone, but now it is clear that this is not so. The heroine looks at the floor, trying to find the right and correct words in the current situation. The man thought that he finally had it, but it seems he was simply mistaken, so he was about to leave the estate. The lady asks if this was a warning. The guy is able to kidnap her whenever he wants, and also come into the room whenever he wants. There were almost no other reasons because the young man asked her attitude, which did not change. This warning was for him too. A smile spreads across the guy's face. His expectations were wrong because now everything has completely changed. The imperial family locked Pysantria in a castle, so the young man believed that the maiden was a little bird who knew nothing, but everything turned out to be the opposite. Obviously, the priest considers the heroine to be a young lady who knows nothing in this life, which seems ridiculous. For some reason, Asriel considered the prince to be the only talented person in the castle, but the lady is also not so simple. The conversation turned to the crown prince, and the beauty did not really want to talk about this topic. It cannot be denied that if you look at the path that the young man had to go through, it becomes clear how beautiful it is. Everyone around knows that the empire flourished thanks to the reign of His Highness the Emperor. Sitting down on the bed, the man is about to say something else, but the lady says that it is all her merit. If this is true, then it becomes unclear why this was done and what the motive was. The maiden was forced to do certain things in order to take the place of the empress in the future and become an exemplary ruler. For some reason, the beauty begins to feel very sleepy, which seems extremely suspicious. She was sure that she could not sleep for 2 nights. Putting his hand on the top of the head of Ersia, who is sitting next to him, the guy talks about how unfair it was. The lady sighs. She doesn't want to think about something like that anymore because it makes her upset. Everything that happened taught Pysantria a good lesson. This doesn't mean she will allow someone to do this to her again. The guy quietly notices the fact that the lady has been looking tired for a long time, which means she has every right to go to sleep in a soft bed. Everything doubles and blurs before my eyes, perhaps due to the fact that the magician's clothes exude some kind of power. Carefully lifting the girl, the guy puts her in bed, carefully covering her with a soft blanket. Almost in a dream, the blonde says that things containing magic should be registered as a national treasure. The imperial palace does not control the temple, especially since such a young lady does not need to worry about such things. Now the beauty will never receive the place of empress because everything is finished, just the way it should be. That is why the monk can take the girl with him. It sounds more like a question, but there is no answer. The princess is called, to which she lazily opens her eyes to see her interlocutor again. If the couple's thoughts strongly converge, then the young man would like to take his beloved away right on the same day. Touching the hood of her cloak, Ersia thinks that she could take off her clothes right now. The girl doesn't want to show such a bad side of herself, so she will leave everything as it is. She doesn't want to take off her cloak. Smiling, the man looks at the princess. She wants to sing a lullaby and put her to sleep, and then hug her. Putting his hand directly to the girl's forehead, the guy tries to do everything so that she finally rests. They will definitely see each other again. Another brawl takes place near the temple. The assistant is holding a man who he says was one of those who lured the student priests to extract information about the temple from them. A face full of sarcasm and betrayal looks straight at a man who has already regretted everything he has done. Most likely, it is better to simply finish off the brunette, who, despite the prohibitions, decided to deceive. The guy almost started to cry, but they tell him that there will be an opportunity to save his life because the guys are planning to contact his boss. There is only one plan, so as soon as the servants find out about the customer, they still need to finish off the person who got caught. The maid of honor, who was standing behind, suddenly notices something unusual. The priest is missing the cloak he usually wears. Turning around to show the smile on his face, the guy says that he just gave it to the princess. The woman freezes, interestedly repeating what she managed to hear. It seems absurd what was said. Bowing her head, the lady listens to questions about whether she is coping with the instructions of His Holiness. Hearing a positive answer, the young man goes off into the temple in the distance, nodding as he goes as a sign of his approval. What happens is disrespectful to the princess, but the lady should be grateful for saving her child. What the young man asks for is just a trifle compared to the happy life of the baby who will now receive it. A woman has to betray her beloved mistress, thereby undermining trust and watch her every move, but it's worth it. Morning had long come, but this did not mean that the lady had gotten enough sleep. She slowly opens her sleepy eyes. As Ersia gets up to sit up in bed, she notices the fact that for some reason she feels too good. Attention turns to the cloak, which falls like a light fan from her shoulders straight into her hands. Looking closer, the heroine freezes on the snow-white thing. The temple patterns are right on the silver ribbon. Memories rush through my head like a whirlwind. Beauty couldn't remember too much, but the words were blurred. Nervously running her eyes from side to side, the beauty looks around. She can't believe that what happened wasn't just a stupid dream that seemed unreal. For the first time, Ersia Pysantria lost the developed vigilance that she usually possessed without any problems. Previously, the girl conducted an investigation about the high priest, but all that was able to understand was that it was extremely difficult to find information about him. The young man's divine power is too warm and pleasant to the touch, so the beauty cannot tear herself away. Having felt the warmth just once, the lady does not want to forget it. which means she will have to be nearby almost all the time. The morning was already in full swing, so the maiden was getting ready to go about her business, stopping only for a minute to look out the window, behind which the sun was shining. The maids who arrived in the room chirped happily that they had brought the necessary accessories. I couldn't believe that these decorations had been sent by the young lady's mother. This was completely out of her style, which was out of line. Mom promised that she would do something similar, but this went beyond the bounds of reason. She is not the kind of person who would just give gifts. While trying on the items that were sent, the lady listens to advice on how beautiful a necklace will look to match her eye color or pale skin, which is beautiful. Everything that was sent by the Duchess will become a source of envy among other girls from noble families. The servants' attitudes changed in just a few days, but it would be more accurate to say that everything returned to normal. The girls who were now fussing around were the ones who had turned their backs on the princess when the prophecy changed. This is no longer so important, because the lady is looking at her reflection with interest. It's hard to imagine a more charming woman. One of the maids offers honey, which was brought from the Principality of Luster, and the other says something about mines and stones. The stone, which was recently discovered, was precisely precious, so the beauty wanted to give it as a token of gratitude. The princess smiles. She will be grateful for any of the gifts that they can give her? Changing the subject, but not going too far, the lady remembers that the gem from the mine was what they wanted to give to Lurtella. No one understands what the maiden wanted to say, but only beautiful people should have jewelry. Recently, it became known that a precious red stone was found in the Pavloon estate. However, the count hid the fact that he discovered it a year ago in order to earn money. The estate decided to make 2 beautiful tiaras. One of them, of course, will be intended for the empress. Another tiara will be given specifically to the princess, which makes her blink her eyes in surprise. Since ancient times, jewelry, and especially tiaras with red jewelry, have been a feature of the royal family. The blonde, still hovering around the heroine, quietly asks if the beauty will accept such a gift in her honor. Nodding, the maiden agrees, which causes her friend to light up with a bright light of joy that was hidden inside. The family's artisans put a lot of effort into making everything the best it can be. The lady agrees, but now she should rest. The girls obediently agree and leave the room. A strange feeling does not leave Ursia because there is something strange there. Lady Lurtella became something forbidden in secular circles, but this did not give reason to treat Pesantria properly. If you look closely at the jewelry that was handed over, you could understand that it was not sent by the Duchess. The decorations were not in the style of the girl's mother. It was impossible for the imperial family to simply abandon the child of prophecy. The beauty follows into the garden, where Ash is already waiting for her. She would like to find out what happened. Lately, the guy and the lady have been seen too often, and if they are noticed, both will be in trouble. Next time she promises to wear a brooch. Ash nods in agreement. The thing is beautiful and perfect for a young lady, so it will mark the meeting place. The guy has been very busy lately, but the lady is going to go horse riding this afternoon so he can rest. Trying to object, the servant assures that he is in perfect order, so he does not need a day off. Bowing his head, the young man admits that this is the least he can do for the Duchess, who has always been with him. The man apologizes for not being able to find more information about Naevia and the High Priest, but the lady says that she entrusted this to her father. What I wanted to know before no longer interested me so much. The lady wants to find out about rumors that may have appeared recently. The man freezes. He tries to remember what exactly he managed to hear. Rumors tend to spread from the lowest to the highest, so the heroine's father placed Asha in a low position. The ladies of the court behave strangely. Despite everything that happened, they again seem to consider Ursia to be the crown empress. The brunette bows his head and quietly says that he had something, but he didn't say it because he wasn't sure. Rumors began to circulate that the high priest had chosen the princess as the next saint to the throne. There are 2 concepts in the world. One thing is when a saint is a person with power, helps and takes care of the safety of people around. The second meaning is the wife of the Holy Father, who controls everything around. He has more privileges. If an ordinary monk wants to get married, he will not be able to do this, since it is prohibited, but the priest can change this. Ash can't believe what happened, but in the end it means that most likely Asriel wants to make the lady his wife. It seems that the priest himself started this rumor, but the servant continues to offer options to distract the public. The lady speaks to Asha again. He shouldn't think about such rumors, which will only make him nervous. Soon the heroine will meet the man in person and ask everything. Now it's worth thinking about how to change everything. Perhaps it was the parents who spread such a rumor, but this is impossible. In any case, this is not official information, so there will be no harm to the Virgin. Compared to the status of the abandoned former crown empress, this is even better for the image. Ash turns to the princess, saying that she has absolutely no divine power, to which she nods because it's true. A man can't think about it that way. No matter how you look at it, it all seems wrong. The choice fell on her for no reason. Someone has always been elected to such a high position purely for political reasons, so perhaps everything is logical. At the time of what is happening, marriage is a great rarity, and even more so for love. The brunette bows his head, sadly saying that he no longer wants to see his mistress hostage in a marriage not for love. The girl froze. It seemed to her that marrying the crown prince was not something against her own desire. The whole truth is that over time, the heroine simply began to take it for granted. She didn't care what she wanted. Initially, the maiden only wanted to take a place next to the future emperor, even if in the end this did not work out. The woman calms down Asha. These are just rumors. They are not the truth, but only what compliments the people around. The man quietly asks if the lady wants to deal with everything alone. It is important for him to understand whether the lady knows at least one way how to do this. Coming closer, the beauty straightens her interlocutor's hair. This conversation seems pointless because nothing can be changed anyway. Everything is okay because the young man says it's all just because he's very worried. Sitting down on the princess's shoulder, the guy asks her to take care of herself first, and only then of the others. Taking a few steps back, Ash nods. He doesn't want to seem weak because he's doing just fine. What he does is work. The princess nods in agreement, but asks to report if things become too difficult for him. Health is also very important. The father did not say anything, but Ursia is more than sure that several more spies got into the palace. The man straightens up. It's not hard for him, but he promises that he will make every effort to make everything better. The brunette was unable to help, and because of this he is forced to watch the princess only from afar. This makes cats scratch their hearts. Virgo thanks Asha because this comes from a pure heart. He objects because he can't do anything while he's somewhere far away, which is not true. When the Duchess first arrived at the unfamiliar castle, Ash arrived with her and has no idea how much he helped. If it were not for the young man's character, the princess would have been a completely different person. But everything has changed. The brunette assures that he understands everything, even without further words. The princess would have achieved the princess status she had without him. The Duchess smiles to once again express her sincere gratitude to the man who saved her. The guy comes closer and, clearing his throat, says that he lives only for the sake of the princess. She can use it as much as she pleases. The servant is so devoted to his mistress that he is ready to give his life for her, ultimately regretting nothing. The Duchess comes closer, asking not to talk about it. This is not what she would like to hear from a devoted person. The people in the Duke's residence would be surprised to see the young man in such a state. Many wondered if Ash had emotions because he did everything like a robot. The guy hopes that the princess will never see grief, sadness, and difficulties that she does not deserve. The young man never wanted the heroine to shed her precious tears, which no one deserves. If Ursia does not cry in front of her subordinates, this does not mean that a complete hurricane is not going on in her soul. A smile spreads on its own. The girl will have no choice but to say gratitude. Asha said that he will always obey the Duchess, so today she orders him to rest a little. As she's leaving, the lady remembers something. She asks not to be surprised, but they are going to kidnap her in a couple of days. There's a lady knocking on the door who doesn't want to wake up someone who probably went to bed late, but she has to. She must convey what Asha said. A rustling sound is heard behind the door, which makes it clear that the owner of the room has finally woken up. Going inside the room, the heroine realizes that the guy never woke up. She goes to the window and opens the curtains. Turning towards the bed, the Duchess notices only the top of her blonde hair, which is slightly visible. Sitting down next to the body, which is wrapped in a blanket, the maiden asks her brother to wake up, because he knows that she is already here. The young man sits up in bed saying that he is glad to see Sia, but definitely not this early. Smiling lightly, seeing her sleepy face, the heroine says that the high priest came to her last night. The guy freezes. He did not expect to hear something like this in the morning because it seemed more absurd. The couple was never able to talk, even if the man said that he definitely had something to tell the princess. Being alone with a stranger can be dangerous, especially when you don't know what kind of person they are. He could send a request to chat. Judging by the man's reaction, it was better for him not to say what happened next. The heroine fell asleep right next to Ariel. Tea was set on the table, so the couple moved there. The virgin told what kind of person he was, because the man turned out to be the same age as his brother. Age aside, the guy seems pretty impressive despite all his credentials. It seems Azrael is quite dangerous because he is very different from those who came before him in the temple. The blonde chuckles, in his opinion. Those who came before him were rather incompetent. High priests are usually quite forgiving and kind. With rare exceptions, they are capable of reprimanding and are not particularly sociable. The head is always afraid of becoming hated by someone. Such people are one of the few who have power and do not have the opportunity to use it. You can't take your eyes off the guy, and the brother believes in this, because until that moment everything was fine and as usual. After listening to Asha's story, the maiden realized that she could not be lenient, especially since there were rumors that he wanted to make the princess a saint. No one understands what Azrael wants to achieve with this, but it seems like a statement that he wants to take a lady as his wife. Only one fact can be confirmed and said for sure. The priest likes the maiden very much, judging by his actions. This is exactly what can be used perfectly and then turned into a revolution. Urxia was formerly the crown princess of the imperial palace. She became the most noble lady, moreover, she had an excellent pedigree. The lady had only one drawback. She was abandoned at the altar, left completely alone, useless to anyone after everything she had done. Now there are rumors that the priest wants to make her his wife, so this will be a great chance to remove the stigma of abandonment. At the moment, both in terms of political views and in general, a man cannot find a better candidate. The conversation pauses, and then the lady suddenly tells her brother that she will need his help. Help needed with kidnapping. Such words made the man choke on his tea and cough. Handing out a napkin, the lady smiles as usual, saying that the crown prince will do this very soon. If the young man nevertheless kidnaps the princess and imprisons her in prison, a fourth detachment of knights will watch her. Among this squad, there are several interesting guys with whom the blonde can help. Just about to continue talking about the kidnapping, the lady freezes as Rias gets up from her chair. The blonde looks at his sister carefully, asking why she suddenly thought that she would be kidnapped. If the heroine were in the place of the prince, she would keep someone like her with her. This is an assumption, but a man can be pushed into it. The only way to imprison the princess is to accuse her of a crime, and then begin to win her over to your side. First of all, there should always be a couple of people next to the princess. The right people have already spread rumors. Recently, in one of the kingdoms, a prince imprisoned a commoner who did not reciprocate his love. The guy's eyes light up. He can't believe that his sister decided to take such a step, thereby trying to do everything on purpose. In fact, even the heroine herself did not want to start all this, but there was also a reason to quickly check something. The guy sighs heavily. He had absolutely nothing to say to Ursia's words, but he understood one thing. It's obvious that the sister doesn't even plan to return to the Duke's mansion, at least not this time. The beauty nods. She doesn't know for sure yet, but for some reason she thinks that this will be better for everyone. The man says that he may refuse to help, to which he is asked what he would do. He can't excuse anything, and if his sister wants to stay, it's her choice. The Duchess does not want to leave her affairs to others, thereby burdening the already difficult burden that they have to bear on themselves. Originally, Pysantria was supposed to bring stability and security to the empire, but now its task has changed. The girl is obliged to improve everything in the kingdom, but according to her brother, this is not all that important. If she wanted to return, she would have returned long ago. Initially, the heroine planned everything this way because she accepted the separation as the will of God. If this is someone's plan, then Virgo will not put up with it. After all, she was disgraced and removed from her place. Most likely it was Lady Lurtella. The man tries to convince to the last. If the princess returned to the palace now, she would have the perfect opportunity to take a break from everything while her brother took care of his problems. If the girl leaves, no one will tell her anything. If things have gone that far, then the young man cannot object. The woman always loved her brother for his understanding. Rias never tried to interfere but remained persistent. The final answer is that the beauty is not going to return to the Duke's estate. Sitting at the table, the beauty thinks about the meaning of the word rest. She has been running around headlong all her life. Erja understood that she should not have found herself in such a deplorable state, but on the throne, The heroine simply resigned herself to such a burden, because the same thing happened when the lady began to conduct the affairs of the emperor on behalf of their family. It was considered something like a debt. The next step was to help the crown prince strengthen his position in society and the trust of others. At the same time, Alfredo was also trying to do his best. He had to go through a lot. Victory was certainly for the crown prince. Venice was able to avoid death only by renouncing the imperial family. Since then, the boy went into battle with Rias and the rest of the knights to save himself, and the heroine helped the exhausted crown prince. It was incredibly difficult for the blonde, but she never thought about rest, realizing everything only after the guy's words. Since childhood, the baby always wanted to return home, and even if this happened once a year, it was a special event. Now, when the girl thinks about the past, she absolutely cannot understand what kind of ban on visiting her parents' house it was. It didn't seem strange before. Attention was diverted by a voice outside the door who asked if he could enter and was given permission. The ladies from the palace go straight to the table itself, saying that a letter has arrived for reading. The high priest personally wrote a paper, setting up a meeting for which it would be good to spend a little time. A whole week passed, and the lady thought that the man would make an appointment earlier. She decided to take the cloak with her. It's a pity to part with the warmth of a soft robe. Over the past few days, the maiden had time to get used to him. This is not something that money can buy, even if the lady would like to do it. We need to come to our senses. Quickly filling out something, the beauty hands the paper to the maiden, asking her to give it to the supreme leader. The girls start whispering as they leave. Snatches of phrases are heard, but one can hear that they now want to tell everyone that the rumors are true. As the lady thought, rumors are already spreading throughout the palace, even if many do not know who Azriel is. The festival is also just around the corner, so you should also prepare for it so that everything goes wonderfully. The festival of the founding of the empire is the very day when the temple played an important role. The priest's identity is shrouded in fog, but soon he will have to reveal himself. You shouldn't lie that the heroine herself thought that she would find out the truth only at the festival, but it turned out differently. Virgo would never have thought that Azriel was the head of the temple. He is too young and his character is not very suitable. At this point, there are people who have more to worry about than a man. The girl broke up with the prince on the day of the celebration and thought that he would soon want to return everything. But it was even better. Worry took over my mind a little. I don't want the young man to come up with an excuse for his rude behavior that night. There is complete silence in the office. No one confuses or interferes with work. Leaning back in her chair, the lady sighs contentedly. She loves silence more than anything else. Virgo wanted to send a letter to her parents, but this may be unsafe because she does not have a single reliable sender. If the Duke had wanted, he would have found a way to communicate himself. You need to enjoy peace and relaxation. Rias also left because he was going to an audience with His Highness, which meant even more joy. Ursia had not been completely alone for a very long time. She could have just read a book because she didn't take time for herself. A knock at the door interrupted the entire idyll. The heroine couldn't believe that someone had returned. But she says that you can enter her. The door slowly opens and Alfredo emerges. He looks a little worried. The girl quietly asks what happened, but the guy doesn't find a reason. He just wanted to be with the beauty. The lady cannot refuse a brother who has always remained so good. The young man's gaze darted to the library. Obviously, the sister wanted to read and was going to find something suitable. Lighting up with joy, the brunette offers to advise something, even if the last book they read was called History of the Empire. The guy asks about the novels, but the girl shakes her head. She didn't want to read a book where ladies get involved in love affairs. Volunteering to look for something, Alfredo heads inside. There will definitely be something interesting in the library. Venetia looks for books on the lowest shelf, while Ursia watches in surprise because she has never looked for stories there. Taking out the publication, the young man notices the fact that he himself has not read it, but thinks that the title is just right. The beauty examines the cover and then laughs quietly. The book should definitely suit her. Alfredo is holding a thing called Secrets with a Teacher, which, according to him, is ideal for its content. Filling with color, the young man begins to wave his arms, saying that he did not want to get exactly this, to which the lady promises that she will definitely read it. While taking the book, the lady forces Alfredo to try to get it, but ends up tripping and falling. The guy picks her up. Raising the beauty and stopping her, the man asks if everything is okay, to which she nods. Apologizing again, the young man repeats once again that he wanted to get another one. Such ridiculous situations become like a hobby for Venice. The boy looks happy, but changes the subject, asking if his sister got hurt. The lady offers to take the little thing and read it in the morning, but the guy squeezes it in his hands, saying that she will not like the content. Something attracts the beauty's attention, so, asking the boy to wait, she opens the window with a bird on the window frame. Looking at the chick that Ursha had been waiting for, she smiles. He will always be a good guest. Lighting one of the candles, the lady unfolds a piece of paper and brings it to the fire. Rumors spread even in the Duke's domain. They check the authenticity because the father has eyes and ears everywhere. The investigation is unlikely to be successful, even in this situation, because we are talking about the head of the temple. Almost reaching the end, the beauty notices the handwriting of her mother, who also seemed to want to say something. The lady knows what situation her daughter is in, and still asks for the impossible. She wants the princess to find a book containing records of the corruption of aristocrats. The book is in the Imperial Library, which can only be entered by members of the family in which the lady is no longer a member. This publication describes all the bribes, corruption, and how it was covered up. There are even sins of the imperial family. It's strange why the girl needed this book, because she didn't want to gain any information. Thoughts are racing through my head because there are a lot of options to use, but the girl is interrupted. Alfredo appeared in the doorway and noticed the fact that his companion had not returned for a long time. The lady had been gone longer than she thought. A plan appears in my head that can only be translated into reality with the help of Venice. There is a book that the beauty is interested in, so she asks to find what she needs to know about. The book Ursha wants to read is in the Imperial Library, where all access is closed. Stretching out her hand and interlocking her fingers, the beauty asks her to help, since she can no longer enter there. Freezing, the brunette reminds that he has no right to take books out of the Imperial Library. Lowering her sad gaze to the floor, the blonde reminds that she has wanted to read this publication for a very long time. The hand goes down, and the voice with notes of pity talks about how the lady hoped for help, at least once. Grabbing his hand again, Alfredo cries out, "No!" He does not want to miss the opportunity that was given to him so opportunely. Burning with desire, the boy promises that he will bring anything to make the girl happy. The girl nods. She thanks the young man, realizing that at least the issue with her mother's request has now been resolved. Finally, everyone returned back to the palace. A week has already passed since the banquet, which dragged on forever. Turning to her sister, Rias notices that she was talking about how she wanted to stay, although in the end, nothing changed. Nodding, the girl also talks about the planned visit to the temple, which was scheduled for today. Now is not a situation where the heroine can simply return to the Duke's house. The epidemic returned to the Count's estate, on the way to the Duke. Freezing in horror, the heroine asks what happened. It must have been something serious. Rias is not susceptible to the disease, but it is better for the beauty not to go as it is dangerous there. Every second person dies, so the Empire must have sent help. It is unknown whether this is an old disease or a new one. The Duchess is interrupted because the flow of words seems unstoppable. It became a habit. The estate was closed, but the Emperor refused to provide any support. Rias looks at her sister sadly, as if making it clear that there is not much need for explanation, considering what happened earlier. If you think about it, the Count was always at odds with the Emperor because he did a lot of bad things. Their family always produced worthy priests, but the Emperor was completely different. Now it becomes clear that the prince does not want the lady to get into the dukedom, because they have refused support. Not a bad way to show the true strength of His Majesty. They don't want Ursha to go home, but even so, she can send a warning. I can't believe that the guy will continue to pretend that he is going to guard the temple in question. Everything is exactly as it seems at first glance, because this is that rare case. The Virgin is going to the temple for a meeting today. All the aristocrats who have heard about this are extremely interested, so they say they are coming in an endless stream. Rias chuckles, but suggests that instead of staying in the palace, they move to the Duke's mansion in the capital. Nodding, the maiden confirms his guesses. The situation is gaining momentum, so it's best to sit back for a while. The young man is also not going to sit idly by, so very soon he wants to start looking for workers. Rumors about the head and the princess became the most discussed. It could not help but become interesting whether the priest would make a saint out of the one abandoned by the oracle. The girl was eager to find out what would happen at the meeting, but she could not guess anything, so she promised to tell her how she would return home. There was no reaction from the prince, and even if he called to meet, nothing worked out due to schedules. It is strange that the young man left his ex-fiancée alone, but perhaps he is simply monitoring the situation in the castle. On the one hand, the owner of the prophecy, Lurtella, made one terrible mistake, but it was not the worst. For some reason, the oracle rejected the former heir to the throne, so the situation itself was gaining furious momentum. In the eyes of the people, the head of the temple chose the maiden. After the banquet, Navia did not stick her head out anywhere. Thanks to the fact that the girl hid, it was easier for the main character to investigate her relationship. Perhaps now thoughts are occupied with whether Ursia should be returned to the imperial palace or not. It is possible that this is true, but it becomes clear that the family does not want the lady to be taken by the temple. The heroine gave a lot to the imperial family, trying for the common good, so they would not want to lose her. The easiest thing for the emperor would have been to make the princess the wife of the second prince Alfred, who was almost her age. The hand squeezed the cup forcefully so it crunched. Apparently she was too fragile, so that's an excuse. If a man wants to intimidate the princess and the girl from the prophecy, he may well use a similar method. Lurtella, as the heiress from the prophecy, will bring safety and tranquility to the world. The Duchess, in her time as the prince's wife, will use her abilities and devote herself entirely to the empire. For His Majesty, this is the most ideal scenario that one could imagine. If everything is as the sister said, then the brother is sure that becoming a saint will become very difficult. Asking the young man if he will go to the temple with her, the maiden gets up. He refuses because he has other things to do. The guy hasn't been to the capital for a long time, so he needs to finish something. When the brother returns, he must bring a small dagger. My father sent it before, but it was thrown out with other unnecessary things. I didn't want to mention the truth. The blonde nods. He knows an excellent craftsman, so he will place the order as quickly as possible. In addition to all this, the beauty did not have a suitable uniform that would be comfortable. Asking his sister again, the young man tries to understand why she needs the uniform and what exactly she means. It turns out that the carriage just recently broke down, so you have to ride a horse. The dress doesn't fit. Nothing can be done, so we will have to go with the exports provided by His Majesty. The heroine understands that this is the only way she can escape somewhere, but she decides to go first in order to become the one. Taking something out of his pocket, the prince holds out a blade wrapped in a dark leather case. This item belongs to Rias, but he can use other weapons. Nobody knows what might happen to my sister there. It would be nice to take Ash with you, but in the end, such an opportunity is not given. If there is such concern, a servant should have been included in the escort on horseback so that he would always keep an eye. The prince wanted to do just that, but they said that they didn't need people from the duchy because they had already chosen everyone. They change knights every month because they are afraid that the princess will bribe them. There was no choice, so all that remained was to prepare for the trip, which was to take place very soon. The brother carefully places the necklace around his neck in order to highlight the heroine's beauty. The day that was supposed to happen was today, so everything had to be controlled. Asking about the completion of preparations, the blonde asks that everything be taken care of while she is in the temple. Accepting the beauty's hand, the man sighs heavily. It's clear from him that he's worried like he hasn't been before. The escort, who has already been chosen, stands next to the horses right next to the entrance to the palace on the side. The people who are a few meters away from the princess are the eyes and ears of the emperor, which is embarrassing. It seems that 14 people are too many to accompany the duke's daughter to the temple. At first glance, it seems that the emperor cares, but this is not the case. A man with gray hair comes forward, bowing carefully. His name is Hiram Matilda, and he's an escort. This deputy from the detachment seems unreliable, but gathering her courage, the beauty asks her brother to go about his business. The beauty will be fine as long as she is confident in her protection. Looking into her sister's eyes, Rias asks to be escorted to the exit of the palace so that he can leave this place. People around are whispering. It is obvious that the aristocrats, after seeing this scene, will once again curry favor with the princess. Addressing Ursia, the guy asks her to stay close to Hiram for her own safety. Looking into his eyes, Sia asks what is the source of such confidence and safety next to him. This guy is someone the Duchess likes. This becomes noticeable almost immediately. Sitting on Matilda's horse, the girl orders him to get going, so the horse gallops along the path into the distance. Just before leaving, Rias called out to Hiram to give him personal instructions. The guy asked to break away from the rest of the guards and guard his sister to the last, so that she would be safe and sound. The blonde tried to argue something but was interrupted, simply asking for the same thing again, as if it was important. The man trusts the guard, so he leaves his sister to him. The other knights look worse. Nodding in agreement, the young man promises that he will do everything possible and exactly as he was ordered. Sia herself did not know about this. Almost closing her eyes from fatigue, the heroine examines the trees. She will finally be able to talk to the priest. The conversation will turn to something important that we haven't been able to talk about for so long. Since the road was extremely boring, the Duchess asks Hiron if he knows her brother. They sparred several times. That was basically all they did together, so there was no point. People around are haunted, discussing Lady Pysantria and the others right next to the road. You need to wear a cape if you feel uncomfortable. A little girl from the crowd waves her hand welcomingly. He seems to be the only person with no bad intentions. The princess smiles and waves back. She doesn't want to seem angry so as not to ruin everything. The baby's mother lights up with a smile just like the child and lifts her daughter into her arms to see more. This path leads the horse to a forest road, so Matilda asks permission to speed up. The lady will be returning back with her brother, so she asks for a separate horse. It's good to see people, but sitting behind the knight, the maiden harms her reputation. As the heroine thought, they will need to ride back on a horse, but now they have arrived at the temple. The knights standing at the entrance thrust their spears forward, forcing the couple to stop, just like the horse. Matilda feels angry but does not have time to say anything because the princess pushes him away. The men standing nearby immediately shy away because they understand who exactly is standing in front of them. Quickly apologizing, they open the gates to the temple, saying that they did not immediately recognize the arriving guest. The hair color, which was visible from several kilometers away, indicates the high status of the heroine. The maiden left the palace only once with the prince under cover, but then a huge fuss arose around them, and they were forbidden to leave. Hair was a hindrance to everything because it was noticed, but at times like these, it was a privilege. Walking inside the palace, the lady follows forward along the corridor, leaving the knight behind her to be first. The people around prove how much they respect the Duchess who has arrived at the temple. Before the girl became the crown princess and the new owner of the prophecy, the temple and the palace were on bad terms. Matilda escorts the beauty almost to the door and then promises that she will go and do what she promised to do earlier. Left alone with the priests, the virgin talks about how pleased she is to meet you. Bowing his head, the young man says that they were all waiting for the arrival of the princess together. Initially, the temple was snow-white and clean, without a single decoration, which over time almost never appeared. Turning around to ask the princess's opinion, the guy also adds that all the changes were made by His Highness. The place was for the worship of God, so it had to exude sincerity without ulterior motives. Looking at the sculptures and figures that were exhibited in the corridor, one could not help but agree that it was truly beautiful. Interrupting the excursion, which had dragged on a little, the priest points to the door where you need to go. In the room, on the sofa, which was the same snow-white, the head is sitting, smiling and rejoicing at the meeting. Walking forward, the lady bows, saying that she came at the call of heaven. It is also correct to say hello in return, so the man responds in kind. Sitting down, the beauty reminds them that they are not strangers, which means there is no need for such formality. This is true, but the girl still wants to say a lot, so the guy is all attention. Looking at the young man, the lady asks why he decided to spread such rumors. Not understanding the problem, the guy asks if the heroine liked this. The rumor that the head had noticed the girl caused the imperial family to be in excitement. Also, along with what happened, the honor of Ercia, who did not hope for such a thing, was restored. Smiling, Azriel asks if the Duchess is not satisfied, but she tries to keep face so as not to be caught. The man offers to do the same thing in the future. She won't regret choosing him. The priest says that all this is only for the princess, but remains a one-sided opinion because no one asks the Duchess herself. The man asks in surprise how it happened that such a lady lived as a puppet all this time. Frowning her eyebrows, the heroine directly asks what they are saying about her. The meeting did not go according to plan from the very beginning. Apparently, the lady does not behave the way the head wants, so he shows this with a clear example. The lady also needs to endure, so when she gets up, she says that she will leave if the man continues in the same spirit. The guy's hand stops the heroine, placing his warm palm right on top. Looking into the eyes of the young lady, the guy notices that she is in too much of a hurry to get somewhere, even if she has no reason to do so. A smile appears completely unnoticeably. It's nice to know that a man needs Ursula just as much as she needs him. In this case, the princess may be more generous. They will put aside unnecessary things and get to the most important things. The blonde nods in agreement. He also has no motive to end the meeting. The girl wanted to tell her something urgent that concerned both of them, so it was worth moving on to the most important thing. Nodding, the blonde is once again convinced that there is no point in talking about something else when there is no time anyway. Starting the same melody again, the young man asks if the beauty has thought about becoming his. Even if there is no divine power, the very fact of the saint's existence has great symbolic meaning. Like the head, the lady shows her face only on holidays. Speaking of this, one can understand that the young man is asking the lady to become his wife, but there is another meaning in this. The rumor that the maiden would become a saint may have turned out to be true, and not the usual stuff to help the princess. For the vast majority of the empire's aristocrats, marriage was a kind of deal that they did not want to break. The deal is usually reviewed by both parties, so the lady does not know what to do or what to say if she refuses. The heroine cannot answer properly because then there will simply be no problems. The beauty still has options, but it looks like the blonde has taken all the initiative into his own hands. When the enemy takes the initiative, you need to hide your weaknesses even better and not give them away. The lady collects her thoughts and asks His Holiness if he understands the meaning of the maiden. It couldn't be that the blonde didn't know all the subtleties of what he was going to set up himself. The princess says this because it seems to her that the young man is losing sight of the significance of the act. The position of saint was still not an official position and was always vacant unless something important happened. The priest is going to place the former bride of the crown prince from the castle in such an important place. Nodding again, the man says that he knows this very well. He doesn't need reminders. Urja Pesantria lost all the moves she had saved. The gaze drops to the floor. If everything goes as it is now, then the left will be obliged to bend the knee to her ex-groom. Miss Lurtella, in turn, climbs the road that the heroine paved on her own. Virgo will also be obliged to bow her proud head before the heir, who, frightened by changes from the oracle, broke all agreements. If the lady agrees to marry the priest, she will have a status in which she does not need to bend the knee to the man who used her. If the blonde can give something like that without anything in return, that should be more than enough. Bowing her head, the lady thinks about something, just for a second, and then asks about the question that is spinning in her subconscious. The man must get something in return, because there are far more people willing to take the place of the partner of the head of the church than there are places for the empress. Even the emperor is wary of this position. A person with this status does not need to perform duties as an empress, and the best option for the people is to follow the church, so the man agrees to this. Even if you turn the entire empire upside down, or even look in other countries, it will be difficult to find such a person. The current head of the church does not seem incompetent, but for some reason he wants to achieve something else. The guy chuckles. He doesn't know why the girl thinks that nothing will work out. In the end, the young man will receive the most valuable thing, Ursula. He gently strokes her hair. The virgin opens her mouth, which crawled down on its own from the surprise she experienced. Nothing good will come from His Holiness receiving this. This can't be weird. The blonde can get a lot of things, even being next to the Duke's daughter. Without even asking, the young lady knew the answer herself. If Azrael can make such a woman his, it is impossible to refuse. The girl does not consider herself to be some kind of thing, so if she begins to belong to the boy, he will become only hers. Adjusting the brooch on his chest, the man nods. If the beloved desires it so much, then it is normal. His Holiness had something else important to say, so gathering his thoughts, he begins. Approaching the closet, the young man takes out a letter from one of the drawers, but not in the usual wrapper, but in black paper. There is a will of the past head of the church, so the beauty, of course, is interested in what is there and what it says. The heroine nods. She will remain silent about everything she hears here, despite what she finds out. Perhaps the young lady already knows about its contents, but still promises to remain silent about everything. Noticing the confusion and confidence on the girl's face, the guy says that the content is a little connected with her. Most of the wills of the heads of the church expressed hope for peace and stability of magic, but the last one simply did not publish it. There was only the fact that the previous head of the church kissed the girl on the forehead and gave a blessing, but that was all. Except for what happened, the lady had no more one-on-one meetings with him, so the interest became even greater. It is better to hear about it now than while in prison, so the beauty expects the contents to be read to her. This applies to the princess, even if the man wanted to lock her in his room for complete safety. Without allowing the girl to object, the young man begins. The oracle was wrong. The words that by becoming an heiress the maiden would bring peace and stability were a lie from the very beginning. The lady jumps up from her seat, grabbing the edge of the tabletop that helped her hold on. In fact, things were much worse. The dizziness was now making itself felt, making it clear that the lie had been revealed. It would be better if the oracle changed overnight and Lurtella was the one the man was talking about. I don't want to believe this, but the blonde man nearby carefully removes the beauty's hands from her face, asking her to calm down. The contents of the oracle were flawed, but this does not mean that the very existence is false. The lie was something else. The maiden should not have been the prince's wife, or she still would not have been able to bring peace and tranquility to the empire. The girl left the place of the prince's bride and held on to the thought that she had been deceived, and soon the lie would be revealed, but perhaps that was the problem. The contents of the received oracle turned out to be a lie, which will have to be accepted, even if it is painful and unpleasant. Asriel lowers his head sadly, watching the tossing of the princess, who now has not seen the real truth in her life. If all this is not true and is fake, then the young lady may be happy, but it doesn't show much. No one ever knew what the person who would bring peace and stability to this world looked like. To ensure peace and stability in the empire, the emperor used the maiden as an improvised tool. Tearing off the hand that the priest was holding, the lady jumps back. Ursha is confident to the last that she was not used, and this is not true. It's strange that the young lady still thinks that way. After everything that happened, she should have realized long ago that she was not important. The baby was locked in the palace and was forbidden to go outside just to enjoy her childhood. Even if the path the heroine was given was not the one she was supposed to take, she was still forced to follow it. The emperor was someone who strictly demanded to exceed his capabilities, so this could not be considered anything other than the use of free power. If this is not true, then the blonde should once again, and maybe even more than once, think about what was done to her. It seems that the man misunderstood because all aristocrats are like that. Even if it's not the right road, most would agree. What is clear is that the king never demanded anything that the beauty could not do. Frowning his brows, the young man tries to understand why the princess is protecting the emperor who used her. Sighing heavily, the lady corrects herself again, because she meant something completely different. The heroine always had enough abilities to complete all the tasks assigned to her. Strong self-confidence literally covered the eyes with a veil that got in the way. Turning towards the window, the lady suggests coming closer to look at something together. The clock tower was something that could be seen from several kilometers away due to its size. It was Pisantria who ordered its construction and developed everything. This is not a luxury, so the young man is not at all sure that it was made for good. Aristocrats don't know, but for ordinary people it is a luxury item. Subjects do not have watches, so they look at the sun to make an appointment. The Virgin built it right in the middle of the city. Turning back, the lady smiles because she always wanted to help ordinary people. When the tower was being built, the girl only thought that it was being built only because she wanted it, and not anyone else. Everyone was against the construction because it is a luxury. Then why build it in the center of the capital? When the lady wanted it, everyone closed their mouths. Everything the princess did had a plan, so she was not considered useless. Everyone who disagreed agreed. All this meant that Ursha created her place herself, literally making her way forward. At first, the princess really thought that she would be used as a pawn of the emperor, who would take advantage of this. But it turned out not to be so. When the beauty built the tower, she, of course, had a clear plan that no one could surpass. When the tower became a local landmark, revenues increased and tourism increased, so it paid off. The emperor and crown prince turned their backs on the girl when the prophecy changed, but she had learned too much. The couple would never understand how much the position of crown princess had given the maiden, even if it was now a thing of the past. Rising from his seat, the priest grins. He thought that for a person like Pisantria, power was not so important. The power itself, of course, had no meaning, but the sweet taste from it was the most important element. Wiping crumbs from his mouth, the young man chuckles again. For someone who talks about power, the girl is too selfless. The girl looks like this, but for those who did not cross a certain line, she was the benevolent empress of the future. Everyone wanted this.